All right, guys, what is going on? Hope everybody is doing well today. Thank you guys for waiting patiently. I kind of like this new routine we have going here. Let some Metal Gear Solid 2 music play in the background, get to check out the member credits, and let people kind of file in so they don't really miss anything important or significant. So, again, a huge thank you to all of you who are here right now, those of you who show up every week. A big thank you to everybody who's going to watch this podcast later on. Really appreciate it. Your support means everything to me here on the channel. And I honestly feel as though I don't say it enough. I just don't want it to come off as too redundant, but it really does mean a lot. So, yeah, thank you guys so much. Hello to everybody in the chat. I asked you guys to help me get to 150 likes before we went live, and you absolutely crushed it. So, thanks for that as well. Let's keep it going. Let's see if we can get to 200 likes. I know that the title of this podcast, to some people, maybe doesn't really ring as true for them, but we certainly have a lot to talk about in this episode of the podcast, more so than usual, I'd say, mainly because there's been so much going on the past couple of weeks, and it's been great. It's actually hard to keep up with all of it, and so it's going to be really good. I think the main focus of today's show, it should be kind of obvious, is going to have to be on the major announcement that happened earlier this week with the uh, announcement that Microsoft has acquired Bethesda. And so, what's interesting about this, in my opinion, is this is an announcement that's so big, so significant that it almost kind of seems as though it takes some time to fully process it and understand it, at least to me. I mean, I knew the second I saw this news, it was huge, but the more I think about it, the more and this is another area as well where I like to hear other people's opinions. It's very important to me to pay attention to what others are saying and get all these different viewpoints and standpoints, um, to kind of figure out, like, what does this really mean? Like, what are the short term implications of this? And what are the long term implications of it beyond what we just immediately uh, assume and, right off the bat, just as a reaction? And so that's going to be the bulk of the conversation. But within this topic, there's going to be a lot of other very interesting things we discuss, such as the exclusivity topic. Will Bethesda's games actually be exclusive or not? Are they going to remain multi-platform? That's obviously going to be a very interesting conversation. One that, frankly, I don't have an actual answer for you because I don't think anybody really knows for sure. To be completely honest, the only person who knows for sure is Phil Spencer, and he's still kind of being a little bit up in the air about it. Understandably so. I mean, this is a massive acquisition, and I'm sure that they're still kind of figuring everything out themselves. But there are a lot of different approaches we can take here with this conversation. We're also going to be talking about Sony and what Sony's response could be, what it maybe should be, and whether or not there is even going to be a significant response from Sony with this recent acquisition news. So that's going to take up a huge chunk of the conversation, if not the majority of the conversation we have today. Let me see what else I have written down here. I do have a couple of other topics. I do want to talk a little bit more as well later on in the podcast about the whole pre-order situation, because unfortunately for a lot of people, it seems like it really hasn't improved much. I mean, even looking at what happened with the Xbox Series X and S, it really does seem like, even though they had it more strategically planned out and gave people much more leeway and a notice, seems like it didn't really go down that much better compared to Sony's, unfortunately. Um, and so I want to talk a little bit about that. And I also want to make sure that at some point during this episode of the podcast, we talk about the big rumor that, you know, I kind of rushed the video out a little bit, but it's something I will 100% continue to talk about as long as it continues to live on and seems like it may end up being a real thing. I mean, even Yang Yeah covered it, which I'm sure Red Gaming Tech was thrilled to see that. I'm talking about the Metal Gear Solid remake rumor and how this is something that apparently, according to Red Gaming Tech, is in fact a real thing. And you guys know Metal Gear Solid is my favorite game franchise, if you couldn't tell by the waiting music or soundtrack I have in the background. You're saying I'm not energetic. It's not that I'm not energetic. I'm just I'm trying to be just very thoughtful and deliberate in what I'm saying here. I don't really have much to rant about as of right now because this to me is a very interesting, engaging conversation, and I've been working really hard lately to try my best to just not be so reactionary to a lot of stuff. And I know that a lot of you do appreciate that, and it's easy for me to be that way. And there are certainly times where there will be just a genuine reaction called for, but I really want to kind of focus more on just kind of getting down to what matters most, which is we all love video games. We all really enjoy video games, and we just want to see them get better and better. And I think that the next 5 years, when it comes to the gaming space, is looking really, really good for everybody. And I've had my issues with Microsoft, obviously, and it is quite unfortunate to an extent because I will admit that there have been times where maybe I've went in pretty hard. I don't necessarily believe it was unjustified, but there is two sides to every coin. There are the pros and the cons, and unfortunately, by me doing this for an extended period of time, it has led to a perception of MBG, to this brand here on the channel, where that perception and that assumption is if I'm talking about Xbox, then I clearly only have negative things to say. And if I'm talking about Xbox, it's clearly because I'm taking the stance of a fanatical fanboy, a radical, somebody who's going to be extreme. And it's unfortunate because there are moments where I do try to genuinely have honest discussions that I think are far from perfect. They're just my opinion, they're just my thoughts, my honest thoughts on the situation. And it just feels sometimes that not enough people are taking a second to actually listen to what I'm really trying to say, what I'm really trying to convey. And they just jump to a conclusion that this guy, he just wants to start problems. He just wants to do the whole, console war thing and whatnot. And that really just is not the truth. I mean, we all grow, we all learn. And I just think it's important to try to always center yourself and realize, like, why are you doing what you're doing? What is the real point here? But we have Trey I am too. He's saying, I want that Metal Gear Solid remake. The original was such a mind-blowing game overall on PlayStation 2, but after Metal Gear Solid 2, I got tired of Kojima's ridiculous storytelling. Well, I can only agree with half of what you're saying here, that half being that I absolutely want a Metal Gear Solid remake. I will take anything in the form of a remake when it comes to Metal Gear Solid at this point, because it's better than getting absolutely nothing. I cannot agree with kind of piecing out after Metal Gear Solid 2, though. I'd argue that half of the allure of Kojima's storytelling is the ridiculousness to an extent. A lot of it's funny because if you think about Metal Gear Solid 4, I mean, we can be real right now. In my opinion, that game is an absolute masterpiece. 10 out of 10. Also one of the most ridiculous games I've ever played. And I love that about it. You know what I mean? Jamal Harris, you're saying first time sending a super chat. Well, thank you for that, buddy. Just want to thank you, man. I was in your stream the day of the Sony event, and you helped me secure PS5 pre-order disc version. I also secured a Series X pre-order. I'm so hyped for next gen. Well, no problem, buddy. I'm glad I could help you out. I really do appreciate you hanging out during the streams, and I do appreciate the super chat, and I'm really glad to know that I could help you in some way secure a PlayStation 5 pre-order, so I'm happy to hear that. And it's nice to see that you also secured an Xbox Series X pre-order, because I know that that was also just as difficult. We also have Oyakarumi saying, can I ask it, let me see if I can read this right. Can I ask it me, or am I the only one that thought that TGS was PlayStation and Nintendo's show? I didn't know Xbox was involved too. Yeah, Xbox did make it clear that they were going to have a presence at TGS this year. They also made sure to let everybody know that it wasn't going to be anything over the top, just really kind of, showing their support for the Japanese gaming community and Japanese game creators and whatnot. No significant next gen news, as we know. All of that kind of already happened, but yeah, I it's kind of weird where you see in 2020 we're at a point in time where Xbox maybe has more of a significant presence at TGS than maybe even PlayStation does. Who would have thought? We also have a new member, Jakes J. Thank you so much for becoming a member. This actually gives me a good opportunity to not only thank all of my members and look forward to your exclusive perks, buddy, but I will have the next episode, the members exclusive episode of MBG and Friends, hopefully going up before the end of this month. I will put a members only post out in the community tab or the community section of the channel. So for those of you who are members or who will become members, look out for that. Obviously, there's going to be a really interesting conversation to be had with everything that has went down in September. So thank you for becoming a member, buddy. And if you do want to support me directly and what I do here on the channel, that's a great way for you to do so. Consider becoming a member. You do get some exclusive perks, and you also get to know that you are helping me out directly and supporting me directly. So thank you so much for that. But yeah, there's going to be a lot to go over and unpack with this acquisition news. I know I have made multiple videos so far, but I think it's safe to say that there's just something a little bit different about a live, dynamic conversation that we can have about the situation. And so, yeah, diving into it here, guys, let's talk about this acquisition. Um, I really do believe that what I said in my title here, Microsoft's mic drop moment, I really do believe that this is their first real mic drop moment of the year. I say of the year, and people are probably wondering, well, what about the Xbox Series X when they first announced that? What about Hellblade 2? Well, you have to remember that actually happened late 2019. I think it was December of 2019. So for me, this really feels like the first true mic drop moment. And I have to give credit where credit is due, where we talked for a long time here on the channel about the things that Microsoft needs to do in order to really kind of close the gap that to me has always seemed kind of obvious with the Xbox One and PS4. And I'm not talking about the sales gap either. I'm actually talking about the games. I'm talking about just Microsoft showing that they are very serious about trying to compete with Sony in the games department, in the games area. Because, even the people who do love a lot of Microsoft's offerings, even the people who do love the Halos, the Gears, the Forzas, and even some of the other stuff that Microsoft is offering, I think the majority of, even the most hardcore Xbox fans can agree that, Microsoft, they had to step up their game, no pun intended there, to really kind of compete on that same level with the quality that Sony's studios have been putting out this generation. And I think that them acquiring Bethesda in this way, it it's a it's a move that says a lot. It tells a very important story for Microsoft that even, me being as big of a PlayStation fan as I am now, I have to be able to tip my hat to Microsoft and say, okay, you are very seriously invested. You're not going to give up. You're going to try to do anything you can to catch up, even if that comes in the form of utilizing your greatest strength, that being Xbox is owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft certainly has more than enough money to be making these types of moves. And it's interesting because when we talk about what Sony should potentially be concerned about with this, I don't necessarily think the biggest thing that Sony should be concerned about is whether or not these games are now going to be exclusive to just the Xbox and the PC. I really do believe that the biggest thing Sony should be concerned about at this point is the fact that Microsoft's CEO, Satya Nadella, did go on record saying that this is something they will continue to pursue, that it doesn't stop with Bethesda. They will continue to look into acquiring other big gaming companies. That should be the number one concern that Sony has right now, because the honest to God truth here, guys, is Sony cannot compete with Microsoft in this area. They simply do not have the capital expenditure to do so. We have Gurjinder. I probably just completely butchered your name, buddy, but Gil is what I'll call you. It's probably what I should have started with. You're saying, hey, MBG, does anyone know if Arkham Knight will be backwards compatible? I never got a chance to play it and I sold my PS4. Yes, I believe that Arkham Knight will 100% be backwards compatible. We know that the PlayStation 5 will play 99% of all PS4 games. That 1%, I don't suspect that games such as Batman Arkham Knight or a lot of these mainstream AAA games, I don't think those are going to be the games that fall into that outlying 1%. I think it's going to be games that you really just don't expect, that I don't suspect anybody's going to be trying to play on their PS5, if I had to assume. So don't worry about that. Yeah, and somebody does mention Arkham Knight is also on the PlayStation Plus collection as well. So rest assured, you will be able to play it on the PlayStation 5. But getting back to what I'm trying to convey here, to me, that's the thing I can't stop thinking about with this acquisition and what it means. When we think about the long term implications, the short term implications, I feel like are a little bit more obvious, where it's like, this is huge news for Xbox and its fans, where suddenly, all of these games, all of these future Bethesda titles, as well as current Bethesda titles, such as Doom Eternal, are going to be hitting Game Pass. So if you're a subscriber of that, huge benefits for you there. There's no denying that. But I feel as though that at this point in time, a lot of people, I think, are kind of not really understanding why Sony should be concerned. And I'll tell you right now, Sony, I'm sure they're not thrilled at the idea that now it seems pretty likely. I mean, there's a 50-50 chance here. We really don't know until we see it happen and until Phil Spencer explicitly confirms it. I mean, it does make sense, in my opinion, after putting more thought into it and hearing what others have to say, that with a $7.5 billion acquisition, it really does make the most sense that if you're going to make that type of investment, it's eventually going to pay itself off. It's going to take a long time, but it will. It just makes sense that you're going to want to keep these games on your ecosystem, on your platform. It really does. And we'll get more into that. Christopher, you're saying, I was so close to convincing my brother to make the switch from Xbox to PS5. The Bethesda acquisition ruined it. I really hope Sony responds soon. Yeah, I will say that it's been interesting watching or hearing what other people have to say, seeing what other people are typing, where some people are saying, well, I was not convinced about getting an Xbox before, but now I am. I actually conducted a poll here on my channel, and I think it has over 21 or 22,000 votes. It has a lot of votes, where I was basically asking that question. I was asking, does this recent Bethesda acquisition change your perspective on Xbox and how you plan to engage with Xbox next generation? Do you plan to play it on PC? Do you plan to now buy an Xbox? Or do you just really not care? Now, for me personally, I can honestly tell you, I've only played two Bethesda games this entire generation, The Evil Within 1 and The Evil Within 2, which I really enjoyed. I thought they were great games. Honestly, I'm a little bit upset to see that we're apparently not getting an Evil Within 3. It seems we're getting Tokyo Ghostwire, if I'm saying that game right. I always get the name of that game confused in my head, but I think that looks okay, but I would have honestly greatly preferred to see an Evil Within 3. But I'm being 100% honest when I say that for some reason, and I don't know why, I can't tell you, Bethesda's games have never really appealed to me in that way. And I know that there's going to be some people that interpret what I'm saying as, oh, of course you're going to say that because you're a PlayStation fan. No, look, I am well aware that for a large chunk of the gaming community, Bethesda's games are huge for them. We could argue about the quality. We could talk about the potential, slight downturn that Bethesda has seemingly been in, right, for the past couple of years, which there's no denying. They've had some struggles with Fallout 76. And I haven't heard great things about the latest Wolfenstein. I forget what it was even called. Things have not been ideal for Bethesda, but the point is, everybody knows what Bethesda is capable of, and they're very much capable of getting right back to what made them so great in the eyes of a lot of gamers when it comes to, the Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and whatnot. But games such as Fallout, I've tried, like, look, this may sound insane to some people, but I tried playing Skyrim, it just wasn't doing it for me. I mean, for me, this was an interesting situation where there were so many people talking about this game and talking about how amazing it was. And, I really just couldn't understand for the life of me, like, what people were seeing in this game. Now, maybe I didn't play it long enough. Maybe I didn't give it enough of a chance, but that's the truth. And so the idea that the next Elder Scrolls game could be exclusive to Xbox, for me personally, and I'm only speaking for me, it doesn't mean much to me. I mean, Starfield is a different scenario because that potentially, that because it will be a new IP will certainly pique my interest. Baka, you're saying Sony doesn't need to respond, but if they were to, Sony has $33 billion in cash on hand. Capcom is $3 billion. Square is $4 billion. Ubisoft is $10 billion. They have choices. And yeah, we do have to understand that it's up to Sony to really determine if that's the best move for them. I'm gonna say right now that anything they choose to do, if they do respond, it's going to have to be very thoughtful, very meticulous. It's going to have to be something that just makes the most sense for Sony and for PlayStation. It can't be a you know just a kind of reactionary response to what has happened here. But there's no doubt that I think Sony is probably paying closer attention to, maybe we do need to consider spending a little bit more money than we were anticipating, because if we don't, and again, this is where I find it interesting, if we don't, then how do we know Microsoft isn't going to? If we don't attempt to try to acquire one of these other companies, as long as they're out there, then there seems to be a pretty decent chance that that could be the next target for Microsoft. And see, that right there is the concern for Sony, where that maybe if there's anything that's pushing them to maybe, feel like a little bit of heat now, where it's like, uh-oh, if they're willing to, like, people need to understand that Microsoft spent, like, you really need to try to wrap your head around $7.5 billion in cash. Okay, really wrap your head around that number, like how much money that really is in cash. Microsoft is not playing around here, and that, like, I'm not gonna lie, it almost concerns me. Like, how serious is Microsoft here? Where are they getting ready to try to buy up everybody and basically just, I don't, I've seen people throw around the term monopolize. Are they going to monopolize the gaming industry? Well, I'll tell you this: a company that can just drop $7.5 billion in cash like it's nothing, yeah, they have the power to do that if that's something they want to do. And I'm telling you, it's something that, really kind of puts everything into perspective. When people say that Microsoft isn't competing with Sony, they don't necessarily mean that in every sense of what they're saying. What they're trying to say is that from a monetary standpoint, from a capital standpoint, uh, yeah, Sony cannot compete. And you could argue, well, maybe they could. They have 33 billion on, cash in hand. They could maybe try to buy Capcom or something, but still, that's it's a huge move for any company to do that. But when I tell you that that's going to be a much more significant move for Sony as a company than it would be Microsoft. Like, Microsoft, if they need to, they can afford to eat $7.5 billion. They don't want to, obviously. No company, no business wants to do that at all. But when I tell you that they can afford to do so, like if things don't work out, they can just eat that money and move right along. Sony can't really do that in the same way that Microsoft can. That's what makes it concerning. Alex, you're saying Microsoft wants to get into the mobile market, so Bethesda was a perfect choice, and you're laughing about that. I mean, we don't really know. Again, we can only assume and speculate what the long-term implications are. I mean, there are some long-term implications that are obvious. Okay, hold on one second here, guys. Let me just make life a little bit easier for some of my moderators. So I'm going to put slow mode in the chat because I do see some people are just not being very cool today. So yeah, but yeah, I really can't emphasize enough just how big of a deal this is, and the implicate like even though we don't know exactly what the implications are in this very moment, one thing we can all agree on is that the implications are significant. I mean, I have seen people kind of take this stance, at least some people. I'm assuming they're very much PlayStation fans, where they take this stance like this isn't a big deal. This isn't a big deal. MBG, nobody should worry about this. Like, who cares? Like, no, I listen to me. I understand that for some people, it's maybe their gut reaction because of how invested they are into PlayStation to take that stance, to treat this as if it's really not that big of a deal and, who cares? But you really have to kind of get that out of your mind when it comes to an acquisition like this, because even though there may be, who knows, maybe many people kind of feel the same way I do about Bethesda's games, where they're not games that I've normally played. I can honestly tell you I've played very few or maybe no Bethesda games at all this entire generation. Even if you are somebody who is in that same boat, surely you have to understand that just because that's you, that like you have to understand just how important a lot of these games are to the wider gaming market, right? Not just you. And when you begin to understand that, then it really starts to sink in how significant this deal is. If Microsoft does in fact decide that, you know what, we're going exclusive, we're making all of these games that were once multi-platform exclusive to our ecosystem, which is, on PC and the Xbox consoles, just the Xbox brand. I mean, guys, that's huge. That's absolutely huge for them. Jose, you're saying with the next Elder Scrolls maybe being Microsoft exclusive and avowed in the works, I would love to see Sony make a full-fledged RPG. Imagine that. You do bring up a really good point, Jose. This does kind of really, in a huge way, immediately diversify a lot of the stuff that's going to come out of Microsoft now from Bethesda, thanks to Bethesda. We already saw that Microsoft was trying, they've been diversifying for better or for worse in your opinion, but this automatically adds a ton of diversity to their lineup and to their output. And so it does maybe, this is where the competition is extremely healthy, where because of this, because Sony doesn't have something to compete with Elder Scrolls, as far as I know, they don't have something that can compete with Avowed. Maybe now this pushes them to, okay, let's get more creative. Let's start to diversify some more. Maybe that does come in the form of acquiring a studio that would fit in making something along those lines. So there is definitely a huge benefit here for PlayStation fans, where this is the competition that I've been asking for. And even though Bethesda to me isn't, the publisher that means the most to me by any stretch of the imagination, still I think this is a good thing, all around in terms of competition. I've always been asking for more competition, and this definitely qualifies as that. Oyakarumi, you're saying, as much as I give Xbox crap, good job on their part, but I look at the company's history. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Yeah, that is true. And to be honest, Oyakarumi, it doesn't seem like that's Microsoft's intention here. If anything, you could argue maybe Sony is more along the lines of putting their eggs in one basket. I believe in that basket, if you want to go with that metaphor, which is exclusive content, hardware, caring about selling that hardware. We're going to find out in the long run, this next generation. It's going to be very interesting to see, you know, uh, who maybe has the better hold on what the future, what's going to be most important to the market in the future in the long run. iSiler18, you're saying, I thought Xbox fans didn't care about exclusives, and that literally changed overnight. Also, Resident Evil 8 development is sounding like a nightmare right now. Yeah, that's the thing, is like we've talked about the Resident Evil 8 thing. I'm not sure what's going on there. I guess I can only just hope that everything smooths out and everything's going to be good with Resident Evil 8. And if they're having issues with it and they have to delay it, then so be it. Delay the game. Make sure you can get it where it needs to be. Don't rush it. But when it comes to the whole, I thought Xbox fans didn't care about exclusives. Look, this is where you kind of have to, when I talk about cutting through everything and just kind of getting down to what really matters, I've, look, I could start going off and go on a tangent right now and be like, but Phil said this, but Xbox fans said this. It doesn't matter because I can tell you one thing for certain. If the tables were turned here, if the turntables, to reference The Office, if that was the case here, is anybody going to sit here and try to convince me that PlayStation fans would not 110% expect every single Bethesda game to be exclusive to the PlayStation platform going forward? I think we can all agree that that would be the expectation. And while we have to understand that it's easy for us to call out maybe something Phil Spencer said not too long ago about exclusives being against what gaming is all about, to then possibly, because he hasn't confirmed it explicitly, turn around and say, oh, but all of Bethesda's games are going to be exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem. Look, we have to understand that this is just something that the executives do. They say one thing and they do another. Look at Jim Ryan with the exclusive situation. We have to call a spade here. Jim Ryan made it sound 100% like all PS5 games are going to be PS5 only, and we saw what Microsoft was doing with cross-gen. We all criticized that just to find out that, oh, it turns out Sony's taking not the exact same approach, but let's be honest, they were not upfront or honest with us about Spider-Man Miles Morales and Horizon Forbidden West being cross-gen. That's just the truth of the matter. So at this point, it's less about pointing our fingers and said, but they said this and they said that. It's more about just trying to understand what this is really going to mean in the long run, in the end, for everybody who cares about the different gaming platforms. Calvin Smith, you're saying, didn't Phil Spencer say exclusives aren't pro-consumer and against what gaming is about? Yeah, see, that's what I mean is he did say that, but let me ask you, does it matter? Does it matter? Is it going to matter if Phil ultimately, people, you have to understand, the human mind, and we all, nobody's perfect. And I'm not trying to defend Phil Spencer here. If anything, I'm speaking on behalf of all people. We all change our minds. We all alter our course. I mean, of course, there are some people who become so rigid, but to sit here and act as if we need to pretend as if things are not ever changing and always evolving. If there's anything I've learned, honestly, in the past 6 months, is that things can change at any moment with any of these companies. And we have to understand, and I know that some people don't want to hear this because of how invested we are in these platforms. These companies are not our friends. They're businesses at the end of the day. And you always have to keep that at the forefront of your mind, because when you do that, you start to realize why these decisions are suddenly being reversed, or why these companies are maybe being a little bit cagey, and why they're saying things the way they are just to then immediately backtrack on it. They're not here to say things to comfort you. They're a business, and they're going to make business decisions that make the most sense in their minds. They're being paid to run the ship and make these decisions. Everything they're doing is supposed to be in the best interest of keeping their business and their company not just alive, but hopefully thriving and above water. That's the point here. We have to understand that. Spacebar. Sony certainly shouldn't try to acquire a publisher. I feel that that would be a panic move in the end from a content standpoint. Sony should stay strategic, but I do think they should invest in services. Yeah, that's an interesting point, because I do kind of agree with that, where I 100% agree that whatever Sony does decide to do, it has to be strategic. It has to be well thought out. And I do agree that it should not be out of it should not be panic driven. It really should be something that's, look at your strengths, double down on those strengths, that being your first party studios, talent. I think talent is key. If there's one thing we know, is that talent is not something that is easy to come by, and it is something you can technically buy, but not all the time. And I think maybe Sony, their greatest strength is, and this is still, I think, the advantage they do have over Microsoft, is they've spent so many years trying to cultivate this culture and this environment where it really is about the talent. It is about allowing the creatives to really do what they do best and get out of the way as much as you can. Sometimes that doesn't work as well as we would want it to in the end, but still you have to respect the creative vision and the the preservation of that. I think that's something Microsoft has been slowly working towards. I think they've been definitely doing that, again, for better or for worse when it comes to their games. But I think that we're going to continue to see that. But that's an area I think Sony really can, they can flex a little bit and be like, okay, like what is our greatest strength? They also have to worry about their weaknesses, which, in my opinion, the weakness in this case when it comes to Sony and what this acquisition may highlight is like, yeah, Sony doesn't have that big RPG, that can compete with maybe something like the next Elder Scrolls. Does it mean they have to immediately jump on it and panic and say, we need it now? No, but it does give them something to think about where maybe try to pursue something like that. Maybe allow one of your studios who would like to pursue something like that to do so. We have Glory Boy Steve. You're saying Sony is putting all their most anticipated games out in year one. To me, that means they already have big things planned to compete with these Bethesda games that are years away. You do bring up a really good point as well, where that is something that I have been saying here on the channel for quite some time, which is when you look at just how many games Sony has already revealed, many of these games already being very highly anticipated, that you would maybe assume, and you would be okay in assuming, or you would have, I should say, that maybe games like the next Horizon or the next God of War are many years away, not just a year away. And I do agree that that does kind of make you think, well, what else does Sony have that we don't know about, that they feel so confident in kind of revealing all of this up front right now? I mean, there's always the possibility that they don't have as much as we think and they just decided to reveal a lot right now. However, I don't think that's the case. If you've been paying attention to, Sony's not, I mean, yeah, I would say words like how they've talked many times before about how they're going to double down on their content. But if you look at their actions, I think it's becoming clear that that's exactly what they've been doing. And it seems to me like they've been doing a good job with it. If what they've been showing recently and their output over the past couple of years is anything to go by, I think, yeah, I think they're trying to go for a quality and quantity approach, which is very difficult to achieve, but it does seem possible. Alex, you're saying as long as I can play Microsoft first party games on my PC on day one of launch, I will not purchase their console. Well, I think a lot of people do have that mindset. And, Phil Spencer, I will say he did say something recently. I don't have the quote in front of me, but I did come across it. And I do appreciate it. He basically reaffirmed, and again, we do have to understand that things can change at any moment. We cannot hang on to every word these executives say. I think we've all learned that lesson recently. But he did say that just because they're investing so heavily in the cloud and because they're investing so heavily in, let me zoom this out just a little bit. Sorry, guys. I just noticed you can kind of see the credits just a little bit. All right. Because they are investing, I kind of messed this up, guys. Sorry. Ruining my flow here. They're investing so heavily in the cloud. They're investing so heavily in all of these different areas where it's really about, being on every platform, being everywhere all the time. He did reassure that they are going to continue to create game consoles and continue to invest in that space. And we could argue all day about, well, if you're not having games just exclusive to your console, does that mean anybody's going to care about it? Well, I mean, yeah, there's always going to be those people who do care about it. I would argue it certainly allows that to take kind of a back seat to an extent. But, it's a situation where I would much rather see Microsoft come out here and say that, yeah, they're still going to make consoles even in the future, regardless of, what their path is, their path forward, where they're walking, the way they're approaching things, because who knows? Like, guys, maybe one day PlayStation will, and when I say one day, I'm talking like in the long distance future here, because it doesn't seem like they're going to be doing this anytime soon, but who knows? Maybe Sony will eventually, be on board with Microsoft's future here. And maybe they will decide, what, in order to really kind of compete, and continue to grow the way we want to, maybe, and again, in the long term, maybe they will have to do that. And if they do, and I'm just saying, if Sony does that, I, as a console fan, would really like to know Well, okay, fine. You want to put your stuff everywhere, you want to be everywhere, whatever. You're going to do what you got to do for the business. Like I said, are you at least still going to make a game console that I can go out and buy? If they can at least do that, then okay, that's something. And so it is nice, I think, of Phil Spencer to be saying that, because it's like he didn't have to, you know. He could very well have come out and say this is going to be the last console we produce, potentially, you know. Um, so just something to think about. Spacebar, you're saying, on a side note, I'm curious about how that ID Software guy feels about being owned by Microsoft now. I know that must have been awkward. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Definitely a weird situation there. Trey, I am too. You're saying, I think we're forgetting sequels. I believe the plan is for Sony to bookend this gen with sequels to God of War with Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West. Look, I don't I do think that to an extent Sony does have this, I guess you could call a little bit of a safety net going into this generation, where they've done such a good job this generation with their games, such as God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn and other games, that they do kind of already have the mind share to an extent where these are what a lot of people would consider must have, must play games. A proper Spider-Man sequel, right? The next Horizon, the next God of War. But I firmly believe, I mean, to me, it seems like an obvious mistake for Sony to look at that and say, well, we're good, we don't have to worry. No, I highly doubt that's what they were doing. I think their approach is, okay, we have these sequels we can kind of rely on as a somewhat of a safety net, but because of that, it should enable them to take more risks, to allow their teams to diversify, to allow their teams to experiment more, because Sony doesn't know, just like we don't know right now, what's the next hit game. What's the next God of War? What's the next Elder Scrolls? What's the next Fortnite? Whatever it may be, just these big games that have had lasting impacts on the entire gaming landscape. Who's going to produce that game next? It very well could be Sony. And they know that the only way they're going to get that is by allowing their teams to continue to experiment, allowing their teams to continue to try different things. And so let's move on and talk about whether or not these games, Bethesda's games, are going to be exclusive to just the Xbox and PC, or essentially just the Xbox ecosystem. Spacebar, you're saying last thought, but a lot of the big Bethesda games seem 2 to 3 years out. Mid-gen seems like it'll be an exclusive slugfest. Yeah, it does kind of, what you're saying here does feed into the conversation that we're about to have. I do agree. It seems like things are really starting, like the bigger picture is starting to unfold a little bit more clearly now, where we can kind of get a better understanding of just what exactly next generation is going to look like, specifically games wise. And I gotta say, this Bethesda acquisition made things much, much more interesting for Xbox than before we knew about it, right? Things were already pretty interesting, I'd argue. But again, it was still very much like, okay, we still have to see it. But ever since they made this acquisition, I think a lot of people were suddenly like, okay, like, you had my curiosity, now you have my attention, basically. Controller Critic Gaming, you're saying, if Sony had a Game Pass type service with backwards compatibility to PS1, it equals value. Yeah, it's interesting, because I see a lot of people say, how come Sony isn't pursuing their own Game Pass type, subscription service? And my answer to that is because if they ever need to, they can do it just like that. Literally just like that. All they have to do, and maybe this is a little bit concerning to those of us who do care about, hardware, but it's just the truth of the matter. All Sony has to do is basically at any given moment say, oh, by the way, all of our first party titles will be dropping into PlayStation Now day and date. That's all they have to do. And suddenly, boom, they have their own Game Pass. And if they want, they can put it on other platforms. T-Max7, you're saying, just speculating, the reason we probably don't have PS1, 2, and 3 backwards compatibility, maybe the libraries will be coming to PS5 as 4K remasters. That's always a possibility. Any game that you don't get through backwards compatibility, has the potential to be remastered. And as we will talk about later in the podcast, it seems as though even games that can be played through backwards compatibility even have the chance of getting remastered. A and B, you're saying with Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Avowed, Wasteland, Outer Worlds, Fable, Starfield, etc., Microsoft is now an RPG powerhouse. Sony must invest more to compete. Yeah, that's what I mean. This is where it seems to me that where Sony has doubled down on the third person, open world action adventure type game. To me, this seems like a clear investment that has solidified Microsoft as of right now as they're going to be the go-to platform for the open world RPGs, the role playing games. And I do agree that, as I said earlier, this really does, to me, seemingly kind of push Sony a little bit to where, like, you know, diversify a little bit. And to be honest, Microsoft also has to do that. We're going to find out just how diverse they're going to be. But just like we don't want to see Sony, be a master of one, we don't want to see that happen to Microsoft either. But I would still argue that Sony has been, even with what they showed with the PS5 so far, it still is looking pretty diverse, to be completely honest. I mean, even just looking at what we're seeing now with Ratchet and Clank, yes, it's tried and true and it's their go to. It is a go to franchise, but still, it's looking pretty good and it's looking a little bit different from, what we've been seeing. Trey, I am too. You're saying forgot Ratchet and Clank. The games will be even more amazing at the end of the generation. I don't care for Bethesda as well, but have played and own some games. So, yeah, so let's dive into the conversation. Before I do, guys, we are over 450 likes on the podcast so far. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate all the support. If you could do me a favor, hit that like button. Let's see if we can get over 500 likes, possibly get to 600 likes, and who knows, maybe even beyond that. It really does help the podcast out more than you know. So thank you so much for that. But we're going to dive into the conversation as to whether or not these games will be, or should they even be, exclusive to the Xbox and PC. And to me, this is where the conversation really heats up, because it's difficult, at least to me, to have a rational, actually like well thought out conversation if the only thing you're focused on is, feeling emotional about, like I'm going to be upset now because as a PlayStation fan, I just don't want to accept this. Microsoft are a bunch of hypocrites. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to put it away right now because I don't care about that. I don't care how hypocritical Phil Spencer may seem, or how hypocritical some Xbox fans may seem, because that doesn't matter at the end of the day. What matters are the facts that are in front of us, which is this is a huge acquisition Microsoft made, and they can do whatever they want at any moment, because again, they don't care about your feelings, they care about their business. So, Deanna Thompson, you're saying Sony should buy Rockstar and you're my hero, MBG. Also, please show yourself soon, please. Well, thank you so much for that. I do appreciate the kind words. And who knows? I cannot sit here and say definitively whenever I'll do a face reveal or go on camera, but I have to imagine at some point, whether it be the not too distant future or the distant future, that could be a reality. Just can't make any promises. But thank you so much for the support. And to be honest, I don't know if Sony could buy Rockstar even if they wanted to. I'm just not sure. I would have to look into that. Just right off, just right off the bat, to me, it just seems a little bit like it's not something that can be a reality. But who knows? Who knows? Plus on Black, you're saying Game Pass is no more than DRM. It's trash to think that a service will have enough money to cover development costs. Give me 14 million sold at $60, then 15 million streaming. We don't even know how much a stream costs. Well, that's the thing. Plus on Black is we have to, like, Microsoft is still in the process. They are still in the process of figuring out how sustainable this really is. Here's the thing you have to understand, though, and anybody listening to this who understandably questions, is this sustainable? Can Microsoft truly allow these AAA games to be produced at the level that we're all hoping to see them produced at the frequency, with the amount of money that needs to be invested into them, and still, can that be profitable and sustainable? Again, this is where you have to understand Microsoft's way of thinking. Microsoft is thinking long term here. This is where you have to look at the 7.5 billion acquisition. Do you know how long it's going to take for Microsoft to break even on that? It's going to take them a long time. All right, and to get in the green with that, it's going to take them a long time. But this is where Microsoft, the reason why this is their mic drop moment is because this is their biggest flex. This is essentially the number, like the only flex, in my opinion, that they could really achieve that Sony simply can't. Where it's like, what can Microsoft do? What is their strength? What can they do that no other company in the gaming space right now can really match them in this way comfortably? As comfortably. That's what I need to emphasize. It's spending that money, because even though we sit here and question, is it sustainable? Microsoft is willing to take that gamble, and God knows they have more than enough money to allow that to take. If it takes 10 years, so be it. That's what they're going to do. They'll go 10 years in the red before they finally get into the green, if that's what they need to do. But they have the money to make that happen. See, that's why Sony, that's why Jim Ryan straight up said, for us, it's not sustainable, because they cannot bleed money the way that Microsoft can comfortably. That is the major advantage that the Xbox brand has, being under Microsoft. And that is, you always heard people say, like, well, Microsoft has more money than Sony. And there would always be a lot of people that say, it doesn't matter, I don't care. And to an extent, I can't argue with that. But this is where you do actually need to start caring a little bit, because you're starting to see Microsoft throw that money around. And let me just, $7.5 billion means a lot less to Microsoft than it does to Sony. That's what you need to understand. When you understand that and you grasp that fact, you start to understand just how it really doesn't matter to Microsoft right now, or even over the next 5 years, how sustainable it may or may not be. What they do believe in is that eventually they can achieve the Netflix model, where eventually, doesn't matter how long it takes, doesn't matter how much money they lose, it will make them money. And not only will it make them money, but they're going to be everywhere in the process. I will admit, like, this is never the model that I truly believed in or cared much about. But there's a lot of things here that, once you really start to think about it from a really rational standpoint and try to understand just exactly, what it is that they're trying to achieve, well, it's as I keep saying and reiterating when I talk about this, is you, like, this acquisition is so much more, like, it's so much more than just they have more studios and games now. This acquisition, I realized, like, when I was 100% correct when I said in my title, in my thumbnail, I said that this acquisition shook the gaming industry. That's 100% correct. It really is. This shook the gaming industry, and it shook Sony. It really did. DL, you're saying Genshin Impact free to download from the PlayStation Store game search in the store to expand your library. Please spread the word. Well, all right, there you go. If that's true, then go for it, I guess. Drex Viathan, you're saying Netflix has been forced to raise its price and shed features, and shows how long before Game Pass is $20 and filled with nothing. I'm assuming you're saying $20 and filled with nothing but services. And yeah, I mean, that is something that we do need to, we do have to pay attention to, is that it's not all, again, like, Microsoft as a business, they don't want to continuously bleed money unnecessarily, and they will adjust if they need to. But I don't know. I'm not sure how much money Netflix has. I don't know. All I know is that Microsoft has a lot of money. I mean, money that's almost unfathomable. And they don't want to bleed that money unnecessarily. But I just feel like Microsoft has proven before, like, if there's one area where they kind of do things that just come off as like, oh, okay, they spend their money, man. Like, they are not afraid to make investments that may not pay off. Look at what they did in the mobile area. The money they spent. What did they acquire? Nokia for how much? For basically the same amount as Bethesda. I don't know how much it was. Maybe it was more than that, but it didn't work out for them in the end. And this might not work for them. We don't know. They don't know. We're gonna find out. Plasmic H, you're saying Xbox gave me a reason to consider a Series S. And yeah, that's what we're going to get into the exclusive talk. One last thing I will bring up is I got to say, this was a very strategic and surgical move done by Microsoft here, where just the day before their pre-orders go live, they decided to drop this news. And I got to tip my hat to them. You're saying 7 billion for Nokia. Yeah, that's crazy, man. Wow, that's insane when you think that they just paid basically the same amount for Bethesda. Although I will say this, I think the Bethesda acquisition, it seems more of a guarantee that eventually it'll work out for the Xbox brand. With the Nokia acquisition, I mean, they're trying to carve their way into a market with like less than 1% market share. There was never, it was always extremely risky. And, you know, anyway, I'm just going to take a moment, guys. Like, I see there's a lot of discourse in the chat. I'm just going to ask nicely. Please try to keep it civil. Please be respectful. We're just trying to keep it gaming here. We're trying to just have an honest conversation, a mature conversation. So just try your best to be as civil as you can. I would really appreciate that. And for those of you who are, thank you so much for doing so. Let's talk about the exclusives. I've been putting this off. So, will Microsoft make these games exclusive? All we have to really go on right now is basically what Phil Spencer has said. And he has said a couple of things. The first thing he essentially said was it'll be on a case-by-case basis, which, that can be interpreted multiple ways. I completely understand how some people are like, oh, well, that clearly means most of them are not going to be exclusive. I can also understand why somebody took that and said, well, that means most of them are going to be exclusive. Just look at the pattern that has already unfolded with their recent acquisitions. But we have to understand this, and to me, this is one of the most important things as well with this whole conversation to understand is this acquisition is very different from any other acquisition. I don't think it's practical, or really honestly, I just don't think it makes sense to look at this Bethesda acquisition as the same way you look at, say, the acquisition of Undead Labs, of Compulsion Games, of Playground Games, and Ninja Theory. I just think they're two completely separate things here. Maybe Microsoft doesn't see it that way. That is what we don't know. But one thing we have to understand is that when Microsoft made this deal, when they went through with it and they announced it, everybody, including them, understood that you're taking a lot of really beloved game franchises. And I want you to do not misinterpret what I'm saying here. I'm giving you a fact. I'm not saying whether or not I agree with it or not, or that, some people interpret this, or they're going to interpret this as I'm now begging Microsoft to please keep their games onto the PlayStation platform. That's not what I'm doing. I don't think anybody can deny that the games that they acquired, a lot of the IP that they acquired, is beloved IP that has been pretty much on all platforms, and everybody essentially had access to the majority of it. And it would be a crazy thing for sure for them to just, one day say, yeah, you can only get that in the Xbox ecosystem now. And I would not blame Microsoft one bit for doing that. Again, if the coin was flipped here and it was Sony who acquired Bethesda and they said everyone, like, I would fully expect Sony to be like, yep, you want access to the next Elder Scrolls, Starfield, whatever it may be, then, on the PlayStation, you're going to have to go buy a PlayStation. You're going to have to invest in the PlayStation ecosystem. I've seen a lot of people say, well, and I actually took this stance myself until I put more thought into it and again heard out some other opinions. So I thought at first, well, there's no way these games would be exclusive, because wouldn't it be in Microsoft's best business interest to allow these games to be on PlayStation? So if you don't want to subscribe to Game Pass, if you don't want to buy the game on the Xbox ecosystem, they can still make some money from PlayStation. But then I realized, that doesn't make too much sense, because they're still going to have to give Sony a 30% cut of every copy of the game sold, which I'm sure they don't want to do that if they don't have to. And not only that, but like, even if this is just a Game Pass move, like even if this is just your Microsoft's play, like, we really want you to get in the Game Pass. Check this out. All Bethesda games, day one on Game Pass. It really does make more sense for them to keep it to just the Xbox ecosystem. It really does. Because that, like, I know Microsoft comes off as like they don't want to strong arm you, but don't be fooled. Like, they want you in. They want you in, and they will do what they have to do to get you in. Sony's no different. This is business. That is business. Now, I could be wrong, and we don't know exactly because we have to wait for Phil Spencer to say it explicitly. RG is what I'm going to call you. A PS5, an Xbox Series S, or a PC makes the most sense this generation for gamers. That's my plan, at least. Yeah, I can't argue with that. I've always said that. Look, like, even though the Xbox, as of right now, is not the most appealing thing to me, I always did say that once I see a game revealed for the Xbox ecosystem that, like, I know I want to play day one, that's probably when I'm going to invest in a Series X or maybe even an S. I don't know. I don't game on PC, so I've never really had that mentality just because I don't game on PC. I don't know if I ever will. I just know right now I'm not going to. But I'm really mainly focused on PlayStation right now because what they're going to be releasing in the next 12 months seemingly really has my attention. But there are some games underneath Microsoft that I'm very much excited to play. Hellblade 2 is the one that stands out. I really want to see more of that. And even though I'm not the biggest Bethesda fan, again, I'm interested to see Starfield. What's crazy to me, thank you for that, Terrence. Thank you for that donation, by the way. What's crazy to me is hearing the, I would like to hear more about this if it's true. What's crazy to me is that apparently Sony was in talks with Bethesda to try to secure Starfield as, I would assume, a 1-year timed exclusivity on the PS5. A 1-year timed exclusive, just to then find out that, we can't make that happen now because Microsoft, I mean, just think about that. Like, Sony was trying to get that game exclusive, at least for a year, on their platform, just to then possibly find out it may never be coming to your platform. That's a twist, man. That is crazy. But there was something else that Phil Spencer said. I don't have the quote in front of me. I actually want to try to find it because I think it's pretty important. Give me one sec. We also have DL, once again, you're saying, do you think Microsoft will do timed exclusivity on Bethesda titles in the future? So I guess what you're asking is it possible that Microsoft could take this approach where their games will be timed exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem, and then eventually they're going to let them release onto the PlayStation console and possibly the Switch as well, and just any other platform? I think that's certainly a possibility. I just don't know. Well, I mean, I don't know. That could very well be what they plan to do because, for anybody who wants to be there day one, they'll be there day one. I mean, in the long run, that could be beneficial to them, but I don't know, man. You talk about a $7.5 billion investment. It really goes one of two ways. It really goes, did you make this investment to maximize the money you're going to make on getting these games everywhere, or did you make this investment because you're doubling down essentially on your own ecosystem, and this is a way you're going to do it, is by taking a bunch of high profile what are widely known and considered to be multi-platform games and suddenly locking them into your ecosystem. We don't know for sure. Let me see if I can find this quote from Phil Spencer. Give me one sec here, guys, because I do want to relay this. Phil Spencer, Bethesda. Let me see what comes up. Maybe this is it. Sorry, I'm just trying to... I don't know. I'm having trouble finding it. But it seemed to me basically what Phil Spencer said, if I can recall correctly, he basically was saying that he wants to, and I think I'm going to be looking to you to hold me to this because I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this correctly. He basically said the gist of his latest quote was he wants to make Xbox the best place to play. Like, that's what he wants to do. And a lot of people interpreted that as, so and he was asked directly, by the way. He was asked directly in this conversation, are you going to make Bethesda games exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem going forward? And his response was basically, well, our focus is Game Pass and making Xbox the best place to play. So a lot of people interpreted those quotes and what he was saying as, yeah, it really, like, he's not saying no. He's also not directly saying yes, but what he's saying seems to be leaning more towards, yeah, they're going to be on Xbox. And what's weird to me is if that's their plan. Again, we have to understand this is such a massive acquisition, and I'm sure they're still figuring it out. Like that's probably why Phil isn't coming out here and directly saying, hey, they're going to be exclusive, or hey, they're not going to be exclusive. You know what I mean? Like that's probably why he's not directly answering this, because I don't know what Microsoft would have to gain necessarily by not just making the answer to this question crystal clear. Like that's the thing I don't understand. And to me, this is why I feel like it's still up in the air. He says a case by case basis, maybe because that's where they want to maybe split it in the middle. Maybe they just want to pick and choose what games they want to keep locked to the Xbox ecosystem, what makes the most sense. Maybe there are some games that they do really feel that it would just be really beneficial for them, just from a revenue standpoint, right? Just how much money is to be gained by possibly making a game such as the next Elder Scrolls multi-platform. You also have to look at the other side of this, where they don't want to enrage everybody. I mean, I don't know how much Microsoft cares, just like they don't care if they're making you really happy. They don't necessarily care from a business perspective if they're going to enrage your soul and announce that, by the way, all these games are exclusive going forward. You know what I mean? If they choose to do that, there could be a lot of blowback, because, I mean, this is where I do have to say that people can say what people have, and I do have to point this out. A lot of people have said that, Sony has been really playing dirty, as you say here. If Sony can play dirty, then why can't Microsoft? And yeah, that's the thing, is like a lot of people said, well, Sony's investing all this money into timed exclusives. Timed exclusives are the worst. You're basically taking away what would be a multi-platform game and locking it off to one place to play. Well, then what do you call this if they do make their games, Bethesda's games, exclusive? What do you call that? And I understand that it's like some people are going to say, oh, it's different because one's timed and one's not. But is it really different, though? It's not. If anything, potentially what Microsoft is doing is even worse, because it's you're never going to play it on another platform again if they decide to make them truly exclusive to just the Xbox ecosystem. And so I said this in a tweet not too long ago, and I'll say it here because I firmly believe it. I know that there are some people who have this stance where they don't believe in exclusives at all. They don't want anything to be exclusive. But to me, that's essentially like saying, let's all hope for world peace. It's not going to happen, right? Like that's just not how things have ever worked, nor how they will ever work. So sitting here and basically taking an idealist approach where, yeah, the gaming landscape would be great if you could just have access to any game on any device and play it at its absolute best. But that's just not how things are going to ever work. So what's the point in even bringing that up? And so to me, this is a situation where I think people just need to accept that exclusive games and even exclusive content, this is where people kind of pushed back on me a little bit. They were like, there's a huge difference between exclusive games and exclusive content. And I agree, there is a difference. But, just sticking with exclusive games for now, I think people need to understand, and more importantly, just accept that exclusive games are always going to be a thing. They're always going to be a thing, and they're never going to go anywhere. It's just like I told you guys with Xbox, where I said, and I got to admit, when I said this, I was not anticipating the acquisition of Bethesda, but I said, Xbox fans, rather than taking this stance where you should be pushing back against exclusives and saying exclusives are bad and they're bad for the industry. Just, turn that energy to Xbox and say, you guys got to do better. Like, make more stuff exclusive. Give us more of a reason to care about your platform over the others and prioritize your platform. And boom, look at what they did. We acquired Bethesda. Wasn't expecting that. A and B, you're saying MMOs like ESO will be multi-plat, others will be exclusive. Since he is vague, everyone is talking about it, and it's smart marketing to get mindshare. That's a good point. That is something I didn't think of where, yeah, this could very well be intentional from a different standpoint where maybe Microsoft sees it as better press to just be vague. Let people talk about it. Let them discuss. Look at what I'm talking about right now. So, yeah, that is, maybe smart marketing right there that I wasn't even considering. And so, you know, I'm gonna leave you with this before we move on here because I don't have an answer for you. We don't know. I cannot sit here and say, well, Phil Spencer said, Phil Spencer texted me and he told me that all of these games are going to be exclusive. So I'm here to tell you, no, nobody knows right now. What I will give you is my opinion. I firmly believe at this point, and I could be wrong. I wouldn't be shocked if I was wrong, but I do believe that these games, Bethesda's future games, will in fact be exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem, and they will not be coming to PlayStation, and they will not be coming to Nintendo platforms, and they will just only be on the Xbox, essentially just the Microsoft platform. That is what I see happening. And I say that mainly because I would just be surprised if it was any other way. I really would be. And I am also taking that stance because I think that if you are somebody where this is a huge deal to you, like if you were looking to buy a PS5, but now you're actually a little bit concerned because you're like, damn, like I was really looking forward to Bethesda's future games next generation, like Starfield, and now I don't know if I'm going to be able to play it on the PS5. If you are that person, I do think it would be in your best interest to honestly just assume that you're not going to be able to play these games on the PS5, because if you assume the other side of that coin, if you assume that you can play these games and then you find out you can't, well, that's just going to be a really bad day for you. To whereas if you just prepare for, in this case, for those people, what would be the worst, which is you can't play Starfield on your PS5, you can't play the next Elder Scrolls on your PS5. We'll just be prepared for that, and we could very well see a situation where, just like, everybody accepts and understands that you can't play God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West on an Xbox console or in the Xbox ecosystem. Well, we might have to prepare ourselves that same line of thinking might begin to apply to to all of Bethesda's games potentially, or even just some of their bigger games. So yeah, I don't know, man. When it comes to, and I guess we'll end this massive, almost hour and a half long topic when it comes to talking about this acquisition. The one last thing I do want to mention, we did talk about it a little bit, but I think it's worth maybe addressing a little bit further here, is Sony's response. What should Sony's response be? Well, as I said earlier, I think if there's anything that should have Sony a little bit shaken up, it is the fact that Microsoft has now flexed on them with their money, the one area where they could easily flex on them, and basically let PlayStation and let every other gaming company know, we can outbuy you. Okay. Now, when Phil Spencer said that he was competing with Google and Amazon more so than Sony, this is what he meant. And I realize that now. This is what he meant. He didn't mean that they're not competing with Sony at all, because they're still competing with them in the game space, in the console space for sure. But in terms of, bigger picture, who's going to make the big industry shaking acquisitions? Well, Google can do that. Amazon can do that. And so in that sense, and I do want it to be known as well. I am thankful, truly. I am thankful because I know I know that I've been hard on Microsoft, but when I tell you I am grateful to see that it's Microsoft acquiring Bethesda and not Google and not Amazon, I am thankful for that, because if it was Google, well, I would never be playing a Bethesda game ever again, ever, under any circumstances. And that would suck. Because, dude, I'm never going to support Stadia. Never going to happen. So I'm thankful for that. Amazon, they just announced their new, what is it called, Luna or something? Another streaming service, which I've seen people say, like, oh, but it's better than Stadia. To which I would argue anything, literally anything, is better than Stadia. And no offense to anybody who does enjoy Stadia, but come on, I'm just not about the future of I at least appreciate Microsoft's approach, where yes, the cloud gaming is a big thing for them. xCloud is huge for them. I genuinely appreciate that they're not taking the same stance as Google and Amazon, where they're like, we're all about cloud gaming 100%. So I am very thankful, very thankful. And this goes for any future acquisitions, because something else this needs, that you need to pay attention, that this does bring up, is, well, we were hearing reports, or at least I don't know how true this is, but apparently this is one of the reasons why Microsoft acquired Bethesda, is because they were getting wind that Bethesda was going up for sale, and it seemed as though Google and Amazon might be interested in purchasing them. And so, apparently Electronic Arts was as well, which that would be a whole different conversation. But yeah, although I still would prefer Electronic Arts over Google or Amazon any day still. Darkland22, you're saying, is Sony going to buy Konami? Well, it's interesting when we talk about the response. I know I'm just kind of like jumping all over the place here, but when we talk about the response that Sony's going to have, no, it would make zero sense for Sony to buy Konami. It would make 100% perfect sense for Sony to try to buy Konami's IP and their development teams, whatever development teams Konami may have left. I don't know what they look like, but that's what makes sense. And so I'm actually going to touch on this more when we talk about Metal Gear Solid later on, because I obviously want to talk about that. I think it's more significant than people might realize. And, it just, Konami makes their money in different areas outside of gaming. And so it's just like, Mr. Hamster saying Sony is not interested in Pinocchio businessman. Yeah, I see you, Mr. Hamster. I see you, Mr. Hamster. But when it comes to Konami, like, you have to think about what makes Konami valuable. I'm sure, like, look, I don't know what Konami's dev teams look like. I can only assume that they're a shell of their former self, because, I mean, what have we really seen out of Konami? You heard what Konami basically did with the Metal Gear development team. I mean, it was ridiculous, the length that they went to basically stop this team from, being a good development team. And people were they treated their employees like prisoners. Based off of what we heard and learned about, wasn't good. So if you think about what's valuable under Konami, it's not Konami itself. I doubt it's their studios. I'm sure they do have some talent. It's their IP. It's the IP that they own and is like locked away. That's what's valuable at Konami. And if Sony was going to have any interest in Konami, that's what they would find interest in. Same thing with any other company who would approach them. Warlord Gaming, you're saying, what if Sony buys Ubisoft? Yeah, I saw this. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like saying things definitively, because, the second if I say right now, Sony will not buy Ubisoft, they're going to buy them and make me look bad. Just like I said, Sony will not do cross-gen games, and we all see how that turned out. But I don't think Sony's going to be buying. Look, I don't know what Sony's response is going to be. To be honest, I don't even know that I know. I don't even know that I know. That's great. That's great. I'm making a lot of sense right now, guys. Let me try that again. I don't know that I know what's best for Sony in this scenario. I think that they know, certainly more so than I do. They know what would be best. And Sony has to really think about if they're going to try to pursue another company like Capcom or Ubisoft. Go get your coffee, MG. Yeah, for real. If they're going to pursue any of these companies, Sony would know much better than I would whether or not that would be a benefit for them, because it could very well be a detriment to them. Maybe it really doesn't make any sense for Sony to make a massive acquisition like this. But again, if there's one thing that does make me kind of question that thought process, is the fact that Microsoft can do serious, critical damage to Sony, at least from a third-party perspective, by buying these massive studios and deciding that they want to lock those games away. I got to tell you, like, that could be another reason why Phil Spencer is being very cagey about whether he's willing to let us know whether or not these games will be exclusive, because maybe he wants to hide that from Sony. Because if he were to come out and say directly, yeah, we're going to make all these games, basically, if Phil Spencer were to come out and say these games are not coming to PlayStation, then I feel like PlayStation would have their answer. To whereas right now, Phil Spencer's kind of keeping Sony up in the air, just like us. Like, wait, what are you guys gonna do? What's your plan with this? If Phil Spencer were to say that and confirm that and allow Sony to be like, okay, now we know for sure that any future acquisition Microsoft makes, they're gonna keep those games off of our platform. Now we need to be worried. I think that would cause more of a reaction from Sony, and I don't know that Microsoft wants that, because Sony does have the ability to buy some studios, but again, not in the same way that Microsoft does, and it would be something that Sony would have to think out way more than Microsoft. Like, they can't afford to eat that the same way Microsoft can. I just don't know that it's in Microsoft's best interest to basically make Sony panic, so that way Sony does decide, you know what, we are going to buy Ubisoft because we have to. Because then that would mean that Microsoft has no chance at buying Ubisoft. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Maybe I'm thinking about this a little bit too much, but it is a situation where you don't know exactly what's going on in the minds of these executives who are making these decisions. I have no idea what Sony's thinking right now. Like, I really don't. I mean, for all I know, Sony might not care. I mean, I find that hard to believe, right? Like, there's no way Sony doesn't care a little bit. Okay, they have to. This is just that type of acquisition. Like, did Sony care about, Ninja Theory and Playground Games and Compulsion? Probably not too much, But we saw that Sony even had a response for that, and that was Insomniac. And think about that for a second. How much did Sony pay for Insomniac? They paid like $230 million roughly, or something like that. That's nothing. That's literally a drop in the bucket compared to what Microsoft just paid. And so, although you could argue that, that investment, for as, as cheap as it may seem compared to the Bethesda one, is already paying off in a really big way for Sony. So a smart investment. See, that's where I see somebody saying you think that they should buy Blue Point Games, and I agree. But even if Sony were to buy Blue Point Games, imagine that announcement right now. How would that look? It wouldn't look very good, would it? I mean, it would be exciting, and I would be very happy, but if you just basically, like, Microsoft buys Bethesda, Sony comes out, oh yeah? Well, we bought Blue Point. It's just like, wait, what? Like, are those two? I don't get it. Is that, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that would be seen as a response, and frankly, it would be seen as a response that's just not really on par. So if Sony did in fact already acquire Blue Point Games, maybe they'll announce that kind of later on. At this point, I don't know, man. The reason why I want to talk about Sony's response is because I find it fascinating and interesting to think that it could be anything. For all I know, Sony's over there panicking right now. Panicking. Looking at places where they could get loans, whatever, to try to buy another big studio, And something else, this is one other thing. I see somebody asking, what are my thoughts on Demon's Souls running at 1440p, 60 FPS? I do want to talk about that as well before the podcast ends, so remind me of that. If I forget, I probably will forget. But just to wrap this up, one last thing I do want to mention here is this. Just because Microsoft has the money doesn't mean every, publisher or studio suddenly wants to sell themselves. That's not necessarily how this works. I mean, you do have to kind of think, well, if Microsoft is going to spend 7.5 billion, does that mean anybody's up for sale? You could argue that with that type of money, yeah, maybe anybody is up for sale, because who's going to deny 7.5 billion? No one. No one. No one. No one's going to do that. So you could make the argument, well, with that kind of money, anybody's up for sale. But there are still companies that, Ubisoft is an interesting one, because Ubisoft almost got bought out by what was that company? Vivendi or something? I don't even know the name of it, but they didn't want to be bought out by them because and one of their main reasons was they literally said, like, their philosophies are way different than ours. And they actually do have some pride in the way they go about, although there's been a lot of issues with Ubisoft that we're not even going to get into. But I'm just saying that was one of their reasons why they don't want to be bought out. They want to stay independent in that way. And so, you have to imagine that that's how a lot of other companies feel as well. But, we don't know, Microsoft, they've clearly changed their approach to, how they allow game developers to be autonomous and really, I mean, look at what they're doing with Bethesda. They're allowing Bethesda to continue to publish their own games, right? They're just like, do your thing. Like, we own you, but do your thing. And that's, to be honest, that's very appealing to these major companies and publishers. It really is. So I don't know, man. Maxwell, you're saying they should go on a buying spree and get Bluepoint, Housemarque, From Software, Kojima Productions, and if they want a publisher, Ubisoft or Square. I mean, that, who knows? Maybe that's what Sony's doing right now. Like, Sony was willing to open up the wallet to secure third-party exclusives, and I think maybe this has made them kind of rethink that approach. And maybe Starfield is a great example where maybe Sony was feeling confident. Maybe Sony was feeling confident where they were like, you know what? We're going to get Starfield because we're going to pay the asking price. And now suddenly like, okay. Like, maybe they have to rethink that strategy where maybe now, you're out here, Sony, you're out here saying you're going to pay for timed exclusives. Microsoft's out here saying we're going to pay for it all. We're going to pay for the game. We're going to pay for the studio. We're going to pay for it all. And that's where Sony, I think, may have to maybe they do have to go on a buying spree potentially to combat that, because when suddenly your strategy of, well, let's pay for these third-party exclusives is no longer viable, what do you do then? Well, then you start building studios, hiring talent. I mean, Sony's already been doing this stuff behind the scenes. They've been, as I've said, expanding their studios, doubling the size of their studios to, create greater game output. They've been doubling down on their greatest strength, which is great to see, but they have to be very aware of the situation and what this, again, the implications this could have on the PlayStation brand going forward. Maxwell, you're saying also they have to go for a dagger and get Bungie. Yeah, I don't know, man. Actually, I was listening to Sacred Symbols recently, which was a very interesting conversation where that was brought up, where like Bungie was brought up, like, should Microsoft go or Sony go for Bungie? And one of the arguments, I think it was Chris Raygun. He kind of said that he doesn't think that makes a lot of sense, because that game is like a game as a service and it's everywhere. And that would essentially be like the equivalent of Microsoft announcing that the Elder Scrolls Online is now going to be exclusive to just the Microsoft platform or something like that. And to that, I feel like I kind of agree a little bit, where it's like, yeah, there is a little bit of a difference between buying a game as a service that's already established and out there that's still running on other platforms, and then just actively removing it from that platform. You could argue the same thing with Minecraft, than it is to basically say future games such as the next Elder Scrolls, Fallout, etc., games that are not yet made will be exclusive. So I do think that is a little bit different. I mean, who knows? Maybe Sony could do that and allow Bungie to keep their game on all platforms, but then also kind of fund the development of a new IP that can be exclusive to just the PlayStation brand. That's a thought, that's something that could be possible. But yeah, I will admit, Sony acquiring Bungie, that would be a hell of a turn of events, right? Who would have saw that coming? The way that turns out would be very interesting if it were to happen. Chris B saying we may return back to a time where multiplats are not common. We have been spoiled. Yeah, that would be interesting, man. I don't know. You really gotta wonder what other third-party deals Sony has already established, what other third-party deals may become in the long run irrelevant. Because let's just run over this quick scenario before we end this conversation and move on. We know that Microsoft announced that the Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo games, which are PlayStation 5 exclusives, they're going to honor that. They're going to say, okay, sure, Sony, you can have those games, but, we have everything else, and we're going to have everything else eventually. And we know those games are going to be timed exclusives as well. What if Sony, we talk about GTA 6. This is something we've been talking about for quite some time. Like, does it exist? Is it real? We don't know. We can assume it's real. When is it going to come out? We can assume sometime later this generation. What if Sony really did work out some type of timed exclusivity deal with GTA 6? What if in the next year or two we find out that Microsoft acquired Take-Two? And dude, I'm just saying, man, like if Microsoft can acquire Bethesda, they can acquire Take-Two. Microsoft can acquire Take-Two much more comfortably than Sony ever could. Could you just imagine that? I mean, these are the long-term implications of this acquisition. But if Bethesda's up for sale, what does that mean for Take-Two? What does that mean for other big publishers? What does that mean? We saw WB. Could you imagine a situation where what if WB Games was still up for sale? Microsoft got both Bethesda and WB. Could you imagine that? That's the scary implications here, guys. We talk about monopolization of the gaming industry, and you talk about these juggernauts such as Amazon and Google entering. Yeah, we can laugh and say, Google, like, what a joke. Stadia, wow. Amazon, Luna, yeah, good luck. But you know what they do have? They have money. And with that money, money talks, man. They can buy up. Just imagine for a second if Google were to buy Bungie or something. What if they were to do it? What if Google were to buy Ubisoft? I'm just saying, like, these are, like, I gotta admit, like, this recent acquisition, really, yeah. I see somebody says Sony woke up a sleeping giant, and I realized, like, I used to never take that terminology seriously. Like, oh yeah, wake up a sleeping giant. Pff, have you seen Microsoft's games lately? Yeah, Sea of Thieves, right? That's the sleeping giant. And I realized, like, wow, I totally, this is what happens when you underestimate, man. And I totally, like, didn't think that this could be a thing. Oh, wait a second. Like, Microsoft is a sleeping giant when it comes to the amount of money they have, how deep their pockets are, and what they could do with those deep pockets, the damage they could do, And this is where I will say this. There's one thing, there is one thing that Microsoft's money can never buy. Ever, and that is the passion and the quality in Sony's games from their first party studios. So that's where Sony, I think, if there's any response Sony has to have, it needs to be driven by that realization. You're saying Amazon is a sleeping giant, not Microsoft. I think they're all sleeping giants. Google, Amazon, like, they have the capital, man. And when you talk about these titans battling each other, turns out the battle's not necessarily going to come in the form of who can produce the better games. The battle's going to come in the form of who can buy the better games. And that's, like, I got to tell you, that's an angle I never thought of. I didn't think of that. I didn't think when I said, oh, wow, look at Sony going out there and trying to gobble up all these third-party timed exclusives. Microsoft, you better get on that. To me, in my mind, I just didn't really think. But don't, I guess you can respond to that by buying a major third-party publisher. Didn't really think of that, right? I gotta admit, like, when I heard about the rumors that Microsoft was considering acquiring WB before they, weren't up for sale anymore, I just didn't think that was gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like I just didn't think like there's just no way. It's too big. It's not gonna happen. And then like I see this Bethesda thing. I'm like, wow, okay, like yeah, this can happen. I guess just like that. Just one day you wake up on a Monday and you're like, I literally didn't believe it when I saw that news drop. I was like, that's not real. Like who's trolling right now? Is it April 1st? Is this an early April Fool's joke? And I realized, oh my god, like this is real. Like what? Darkland 22, you're saying, remember David slayed Goliath. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like, just because Sony, Sony has their strengths. PlayStation has their strengths, and their strengths aren't going anywhere. That's something that Microsoft can't buy. They can't buy something that takes away Sony's strength. They can just make life more difficult for Sony, though, that's for sure. Wildlife, you're saying they have money, but how many are willing to sell? Yeah, there's a lot of questions that we just simply don't have the answer to. I mean, if I were to have asked you guys a month ago, if I were to say, do you think there's any chance that Microsoft could buy Bethesda? I mean, or ZeniMax? Like, what would your response have honestly have been? Like, that wasn't even something that was even remotely on my radar, let alone me thinking about asking it. And I just can't help but wonder how many people at that point in time, like a month ago, would have said, yeah, that's not going to happen, right? I feel like there would probably have been a decent amount, you know? I see you're saying MBG. I think you're way too worried about this. No, I'm not worried. I mean, I'm not worried because I'm not Sony. Okay, like I'm not. It's not my business to run. If I was Sony, I'd be worried. I'm just saying, like, trying to imagine like how Sony must feel. Yeah, I think that they should be. I made a video earlier this week where I said they shouldn't be worried, but I realized that like I was jumping the gun too much on that because I didn't fully understand like the bigger picture implications here. I do think that Sony, to an extent, like they have security and you have your first party studios, you have your brand, and those are just things that no one can take away from you. Only you can deconstruct that yourself if you want to. But I just think that this is, it's a big splash that's shaking up the gaming industry, and it just goes to show. And I think that this is the most important thing. It goes to show just how quickly, just like that, things can change. Things can be flipped, and that's where Sony, it's in their best interest to be on your toes, man. Be on your toes. Stellar, you're saying Epic and Unreal Engine, perhaps? Yeah, maybe. MBG, you're overly nervous, bro. You guys need to chill, like relax. I mean, I'm just going to be real right now. If you're somebody who loves Bethesda games and you were also planning to make the PS5 your main platform and you really weren't planning on playing on the Xbox at all, you should be worried. How could you not be? I'm not worried. Like I told you guys, like Bethesda games are not really my cup of tea. That doesn't mean I won't pay attention to them or possibly be interested in some of their future games. They've never been my cup of tea. I've never really been invested in Bethesda games, but it doesn't mean that I don't understand like how huge this is for a lot of people. It's very huge. Plasmic H, thank you so much, buddy, for becoming a channel member. I really do appreciate that. I hope we can look forward to your exclusive perks. Appreciate the direct support. Huge shout out to all my members. Thank you guys so much for directly enabling me to do what I do here on the channel and continue to put more focus into it and more effort into it. So let's move along here. I said that we were going to talk about the pre-order situation, but what I actually want to talk about before that, let's talk about Demon's Souls, because I see a lot of people bringing this up, and of course, we're getting into the nonsensical console war territory of, well, look at that, the PS5 1440p 60 FPS. It's just like, guys, I can't. I don't have too much to say about this because I just don't have the energy, frankly, or even I don't have the will to care anymore about the bullshit. I just don't. Like, I get it. You want to say, well, what about, back with the 1080p and 900p and everybody made a big deal about that. I wasn't making a big deal about that. I wasn't even on YouTube at that time, man. Like, I don't want to hear that. So I don't care, man. You got to understand, like, when it comes to the console wars and the fuel that people are going to use to sling shit at each other back and forth, you got to understand that nothing's off limits. And each side, if you want to look at it that way, of radicals, they're going to take whatever they can get. And I admit, I have no problem admitting, there's been times I've dipped my toe in that water, and maybe I've gotten too involved, and I'm like, this is dumb as hell. This is really dumb and pointless. Like, what am I doing? And you just walk the hell away and grow up a little bit and be like, you know what? Look, what I can say is this, from as rationally and as honestly as I can. When I went back and I watched that Demon Souls gameplay in 4K, or what I thought it was 4K, I went back and I watched it on my big screen TV, 60 FPS. I was blown away by how damn good that game looked. Now, if you think for a second that the first thing on my mind was, but is it in 4K? If you think that's and I'm going to extend this a little bit further. If that's the first thing that hits your brain when you watch that type of stuff, when you're sitting down and you're watching gameplay and you're seeing a demonstration of a game, everybody's free to care about what they want, to decide for themselves what matters most to them in this space that we call gaming. But I'm just going to give a little bit of advice, and that advice is, I think you should maybe try to take a step back, honestly, and just reevaluate why you're invested in gaming in the first place. Like, what has brought you here to this moment? Like, what matters to you truly? And if it really is about, wow, Demon Souls isn't 4K, so therefore I can't play it, I think you need to take a break. Like, I really do. I think you need to take a break and you need to just reevaluate. And it's funny. You're going to see people, they're going to say, you're just damage controlling, MBG. Feel free. I encourage you. If that's how you genuinely interpret what I'm saying, it's damage control, then feel free. Continue to say that. Doesn't bother me at all because I don't care. I'm going to be playing Demon Souls day one on my PS5 and I'm going to be enjoying it. I mean, guys, like The Last of Us Part 2, can we all kind of agree that was possibly the best looking game of the entire generation, if not the best, certainly one of the best, in the top 3 easily. That game ran at 1440p. Do you think I cared? Do you think that because when I booted up that game and played it on my PS4 Pro, it wasn't in native 4K? I was like, I put the controller down, like, can't enjoy it now. Nope, can't do it. Unbelievable. No. Although, how I felt about that game by the end is a different story entirely, but Baka, you're saying, actually, back on January, there was a rumor about Sony trying to acquire Bethesda and ZeniMax on Reddit. How funny it would be if it was true. Maybe Microsoft outbid them, man. Maybe Sony really was. Maybe, because we heard that this was something that was going on for quite some time, where ZeniMax was possibly going up for sale. Maybe Sony was like, this is the max we're willing to pay. And maybe in this area, Microsoft outbid them, like, we'll double it, potentially, And at that point, Sony's like, we can't do anything, Drex via then, you're saying Digital Foundry already covered their butt, saying it's not a final build and can't confirm it until they got the final build. Look at how Spider-Man bit them on the butt. Yeah, but look, I don't mind celebrating some things. Like, hey, if Demon Souls was any game on the PlayStation 5 that hits native 4K 60 FPS, that's great. That's great. But I just can't continue to put on the facade that, like, oh man, like, look, I'm sure I'm positive, okay, that there are going to be games that are within the Microsoft ecosystem that are not going to hit native 4K 60 FPS. I guarantee it. And I can also guarantee you, I'm not going to be out here being like, ha, look at that, guys. This whatever game doesn't hit, who cares, man? Like, I get it. At a point in time, maybe we're so bored that's all we can focus on. But dude, the next gen consoles are launching in literally less than 2 months. And that's all I care about, man, is the gaming experiences and enjoying them. I'm just, if there's something I've been kind of waking up to a little bit more these days, not just here on YouTube, but also over on Twitter, just anywhere on the internet, is there's so much toxic bullshit, not just in the world, but you look at the cesspools of the internet and you're just like, and I'm going to start swearing a little bit here. So if you don't want to hear it, you're going to have to mute me for a little bit. But like the shit that people focus on and fixate on, and again, I'm not perfect. I'm guilty of it myself. At what point do you realize like you're a fucking loser? Like, and I'm not trying like, and I'm not saying that directly towards anybody because I'm not. If anything, I could be talking about myself here. Like, at what point do you realize, like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? Like, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm choosing to spend the little time on this earth that I have doing and engaging in. And I get it. There's always going to be people who do it no matter what. And so I guess all I'm trying to say is I just don't care. I just don't care, man. If you don't like Demon's Souls, don't play it. Don't buy it. If you don't like PlayStation, well, first of all, what the hell are you even doing here? But second of all, don't buy it. Like, if you like Demon's Souls, buy it, play it, and enjoy it. And if you think for a second that I'm not going to give my own opinion here on the internet, guess what? I don't give my opinion here on the internet with the hopes that I can't wait to argue with somebody. I can't wait to shut someone down. Not at all. I give my opinion to allow anybody who wants to take the time out of their life to listen to it and hear it to do so. And I greatly appreciate that. I certainly do not expect everybody to agree with me, and I certainly do not discourage anybody to respectfully disagree with my arguments. I really don't. But when it comes to the toxic bullshit, man, don't have the time or the patience for it, and I couldn't be bothered, man. I have more important things to focus on in my life than, like, like, aren't you going to make a rant video about 1440p? Like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually, enjoy my life a little bit. That's what I'm going to do. I would suggest maybe you try doing the same thing. Let me see. We have Chase the Chosen One. You're saying it's confirmed 4K 30 with ray tracing and 1440p 60 with ray tracing and has global illumination as well. Yeah, and that, it's all great. Like, look, if you want to know why I'm as intense as I am right now, to be honest, Siler18, you're saying dirty talk from MBG should be more common. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. If you want to know why I'm going in so hard right now, well, that's not how I see it, but why I'm just so like, outwardly against, look, the most important thing to me as somebody who, I care about my money, obviously, and where it goes, as I'm sure all of you do. And when I think about gaming, I always look at it as a type of investment, especially when it comes to investing in a new console or anything that's particularly expensive. The thing that matters to me most is what I'm seeing. What I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, what I'm going to experience. Okay? The reason why I think people were so upset with Halo Infinite is kind of obvious. It's because what they were seeing did not at all meet most people's expectations. And it's I made this video where I said Halo Infinite, at least the demonstration they showed, really kind of makes the Xbox Series X look like a joke. And I believe that. And it's funny to me because it's like, notice how people are not saying the same thing. People are not upset with Demon's Souls. They're not going to be upset with Demon's Souls when they find out it's 1440p because no one cares. What people care about is, wow, this game looks really fun and really good, and I can't wait to play it. But even just from a gameplay standpoint, like, we already know it's going to be great, but even visually, like, how could you look at Demon's Souls? Like, honestly, how can you call yourself a gamer, somebody who enjoys video games? Look at Demon's Souls, watch that trailer, watch that gameplay, and walk away from it saying, but it's 1440p. Like, you may as well dress up like a clown. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you may as well put on your clown shoes and put on your makeup and pick up your controller and say, I'm a gamer. Go ahead, do it, because that's essentially how you come off to everybody. Just barely victories. You're saying Xbox IP is not better than Horizon, God of War, DS, Final Fantasy 16, Ratchet and Clank. I mean, I think Xbox kind of they have some way to go. I think with really kind of reestablishing themselves as a powerhouse with their IP. I think that they can do it. I think they can do it. Look, I think Xbox has the potential. I think now more than ever, now that they have Bethesda, I really think that things are really going to heat up for them in a good way. But yeah, whiny gamer nerds. Yeah, look, I mean, I get it. I understand the how hypocritical it is for me whining about other people whining. I get it. But how can things ever get better if you don't complain a little bit? But I think we can all agree that there is a very clear, distinct line between just trying to be better, trying to be more mature, trying to be a little bit less toxic about situations. And like, again, I'm not trying to sit here and play innocent or the victim or something. It's not that at all. Like, dude, I I've done my fair share of toxic behavior, and we all have that within us. It's just, I realize as I've grown a little bit that I just, like, there's more important things to focus on, and there's a much better way to kind of go about, um, voicing concern, voicing frustration, voicing all of these things that could be perceived very easily as negative. Um, I just don't think that like, if you want to know my honest opinion, like if you were to ask me right now, MBG, what do you think about Demon Souls being 1440p 60 FPS on PS5? My honest to God gut answer is okay. That's all it is. Like, oh, okay. I mean, I really don't have, I can't say anything more about it. I really can't. Like, I guess if I had to ask a follow up question, will there be a native 4K mode for those who care most about resolution? And at last I checked, I think there is. I think there's going to be a performance mode and a graphics mode, and that's great. I have said in the past, guys, and I will bring this up one more time. My biggest, I guess, hope for a lot of games, any next gen games, whether it's for Xbox or PlayStation, but specifically with Sony and their studios because they can control it. As I said, look, if you can't hit native 4K because that's not the be all end all, at the very least, at least if you can't hit native 4K without sacrificing that 60 FPS, it just would be really nice if we could get a performance mode with each game. And what has Sony revealed so far? This is why I don't care, because it seems like they have it covered, where if the resolution, that native 4K resolution isn't everything to you, you have the option to play with the higher frame rate with with the performance mode. Billy Too Smooth, you're saying From Software, Bluepoint, Team Ninja, please. I'm assuming those are studios that you would like Sony to acquire. Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting to see if they acquired any of them. I think Bluepoint right now makes the most sense. I don't know why Sony hasn't acquired Bluepoint already. Maybe Bluepoint doesn't want to be acquired. I doubt that. I'm sure they would love to, considering how good their relationship with Sony is. But I'm just saying, man, like, if you want to care about resolution, and if you're somebody where it really kind of, chaps your ass to find out that, Demon Souls can't run at native 4K 60 FPS, then, by all means, go pick up your pitchfork and go freak out and, go in the forums and be toxic and whatnot, and let that prevent you from potentially enjoying a great game. But I'm not going to let it stop me from enjoying a great game. And, as I continue to do this for longer and longer, I begin to realize that there's just some things that, you really got to question how much it actually matters. Like, we can spend a couple of minutes talking about it and be like, oh, well, Demon Souls isn't native 4K, and it makes you question, well, how many games will be native 4K? And it's like, blah, blah, blah. Look, everything Sony has shown me so far, I'm more than impressed. I see somebody say, wow, this chat is a cesspool. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, you're going to find it's the nature of the channel. I'd say there's a lot of really great individuals in the chat. There's a lot of really great people in there, but there's also always going to be those not so great individuals that this is their purpose in life. They get some type of high or satisfaction from it, and that's just the way it is, man. Becky Turvey, you're saying PlayStation has proven that you don't need a game to be in 4K for it to be great. We don't play games for resolution, we play for the experience. Yeah, and I guess, like, look, I can't completely argue. Like, if you're somebody who were to bring up the argument, well, what about all the PlayStation fans who were going in hard at the beginning of this generation with the whole 1080p versus 900 and 720p thing? And you know what? You're not wrong. I get that. And that's where you can use that argument against, I guess, some PlayStation fans who were doing that, where it's like, you can't do that. You just, there's no point in doing that, because eventually you realize that, yeah, that's not why you play games. There was a lot of great games on the Xbox One. Look at Rise Son of Rome. Okay, that's a game that it still looks amazing. It still holds up. And it looked ahead of its time, frankly, when we saw it. And I'm pretty sure that game wasn't native 1080p. And I'm about 99, no, I'm not 99.9% sure. I'm 100% sure that that didn't matter to me when I played it, that I enjoyed the game for what it was. Don't get me wrong. There are some circumstances where, I remember when I tried playing Battlefield 4 on the Xbox One, I was a little bit disappointed to find out, wow, like Battlefield 4 720p on the Xbox One, but it's 1080p on the PS4. That is understandably disappointing, because you can very clearly see that difference. You can very clearly see that visible difference, and it can have an impact on your enjoyment of the product. But, I guess I'm just saying what I've seen on the PlayStation 5 so far. Everything Sony has shown me, it looks really good, man. I haven't seen a game yet that makes me question, oh, like, ew, I don't know, like that's next gen. That doesn't look like, no. Spider-Man Miles Morales, even it being a cross-gen game, looked phenomenal. It looked amazing, and so that's really all I have to say about it, guys. I didn't, I was even questioning whether or not I wanted to bring it up, because I knew it was just gonna, make me kind of whine a little bit and get all irritated and bent out of shape. But it's just because there's just been an influx of toxicity that, again, I know people enjoy it. And if anything, maybe I'm giving them the satisfaction by even bringing it up whatsoever. But I guess my only advice to everybody out there is, when you look at games and you're trying to decide, what's the next game I want to play? What games do I want to be excited for? The best advice I can give you is just sit down, watch what they're showing you, look at it, and just evaluate for yourself if it looks good to you. If you think the game looks good to you, then that's all that matters. If you think the game looks impressive, and if it doesn't, then that matters as well. But it matters to you. So, when it comes to Demon Souls, if what you're seeing doesn't look impressive, if what you're seeing, makes you feel like, wow, I can't believe this, it doesn't hit native 4K, I just don't know if I can enjoy this game because of that, then yeah. See, it's people like this, man, that you gotta just get them out. You know what I mean? You gotta get them out, because it's like, what are you even doing here, man? What are you even doing here? All right. Primal Plasma, you're saying, I was just playing the game Vigor on Nintendo Switch at 720p resolution on a 4K. I'm assuming you meant to say 4K TV or monitor. I'm immersed in the gameplay, not thinking about resolution at all. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not against higher resolution. You know what I mean? I'm definitely not against it. I just feel as though there's this fine line, not a fine line, but a clear line between, like, how much are you really going to let that get in the way of, By the way, what's really funny about this is when I talk like this, it very clearly points out the people that, need to be kind of removed. MBG is naked recording this. I assure you I'm not, but damn, that's funny. That would be weird as hell and creepy. That would be weird. Game Knobs, you're saying, another member of Digital Foundry said that developers are having a much easier time developing for PS5 over the Series X, and they also said the Series X is coming in hot. Yeah, I believe that has to do with the reason why that's happening. After looking, it's a shift in the SDK. I believe developers were used to developing Xbox games on the XDK, and they moved over to the GDK, which is a more, as Richard Ledbetter put, a more general development. So naturally, they're going to have some developers are going to have a little bit more of a struggle because they have to learn some new things. They have to take more time to get more familiar with it. And it's just going to take long. And when you talk about the Series X coming in hot, I think that's what it means, and that's why it might take developers some time to really fully wrap their understanding around the Series X and fully be able to take advantage of it. But from what we've heard about the PS5, it's pretty much the same dev environment that they offered with the PS4, except they have all of these like upgrades that apparently developers can just kind of immediately, if they want to, take advantage of. So that's great. But yeah, guys, if you could do me a favor, hit that like button. We're already over 800 likes, which is amazing. Thank you guys so much. Let's see if we can get to 900 likes, maybe even 1K before this podcast is up. I'm already over 2 hours, and I got to tell you guys, it does not feel that way. Time flies when you're ranting. And yeah, just oodle texture. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I said the word oodle kraken in one of my last videos, and I didn't realize I said that. And I'm just like, it's a hell of a thing to say, man. Oodle Kraken. Shelly Shell, you're saying I'm an old school Atari and Intellivision gamer. Even had a Commodore 64. Thanks for being the one who creates interesting topics for debate game on. Well, thank you so much for that, buddy. I appreciate that support. Guys, it's a journey. That's the thing about life in general, but even on YouTube, it's a journey. You grow, you learn, and everybody has a choice. They have a conscious choice. You can try to be better, or you can stay the same, or you can, in some cases, even regress. And I don't know, man. I'm about trying to be better, and that's what I'm trying to do these days. We still have some more stuff to talk about before we end this, though. Stardust Dragon X3 Dealer Gaming and his flunkies are the reason why Xbox toxicity has grown so much. Crap Gamer is Potter reason for PlayStation. I don't know what you're saying there, but man, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't pay too much attention to other content creators that like. If I do pay attention to other content creators, it's because I'm genuinely trying to engage, and I think people like Dealer and I'm not familiar with Crap Gamer too much, to be completely honest. But I do watch the RDX podcast sometimes, and I gotta admit, like, it's a pretty decent show. I know that sounds crazy, but like people are like, oh my god, is MVG saying it's like, no, I think I think they have interesting discussions, and they're discussions that I don't always agree with. Certainly not. I really don't. But it is something that I feel like there are times I walk away and I feel like I learned something. I feel like it's just interesting, that you get some interesting guests on there. So yeah, I know that people expect me to kind of take this stance, like, we gotta like, attack and you can't show mercy and this shit. It's just like, like if you don't have to like something, man, but I just feel like when you hate something, when you're holding on to something, you're only hurting yourself. Like if you don't like it, just walk away, like don't even pay attention to it. But I listen to a lot of other podcasts. Sometimes it's it can be difficult because I'm trying to do my own thing, but I do appreciate listening to other content creators and what they bring to the table. And I think at the end of the day, the people who are trying their best to really actually try to do something meaningful and bring something meaningful to the table and to the discussion, and something that can be considered, more progressive and not necessarily just aggressive and, hateful in some cases. I appreciate that, and I feel like that's where we kind of have to, learn from one another, and just, you got to put your best foot forward. And, sometimes we don't always do that. Sometimes we make mistakes, totally understandable, but you can't sit there and hold a grudge. Oh, Yakurumi, you're saying that's what I mean about don't put all your hope onto one company, Bethesda reviving Xbox because you don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's in, I've seen a lot of people kind of take the stance with what is it? The idea that Bethesda's games are just like garbage now, and they're now just going to be garbage on Xbox. Like, I don't look. I haven't paid too much attention to Bethesda. I saw the whole Fallout 76 thing, and some of their games recently just haven't really been doing too great. And yeah, we could easily take the stance and like poke fun and be like, "Ha, looks like you just got more Metacritic 60s and 50s to rack up." And but it's just like, again, I'm just getting tired of it, guys. Like, I think Bethesda is a huge publisher. They have a lot of potential. They've proven themselves in the past, and they can certainly get back to that. And I think there are a lot of positive things to be derived, to be completely honest. There are a lot of positive things to be derived from the acquisition. I think Microsoft could potentially benefit them for sure. We have to see, of course, but I'm just not looking at it as like, oh man. Again, it just gets old, man. It gets old. Rosh Dom V2, you're saying both sides are equally toxic. I enjoy games on both. I agree. That's the thing, is like when you start looking at things as like um when you start looking at things as like taking sides, I think that's when things just get really out of hand. They really do, because it's like, is it really that, guys? Like, there isn't enough divide in the real world. We have to do it here too. We can't just enjoy some stuff. And you know what I mean? And I'm not about forcing positivity. It's not about forced positivity, but I think people confuse the idea of, there is a distinct difference between forcing positivity versus trying to focus on positivity. There is a huge difference. And anybody who has lived life long enough and experienced some not so great things, you will know that for a fact. There's a difference between forcing it and focusing on it. But anyway, this is getting pretty deep up in here. So I did want to talk, believe it or not, about a little bit about Metal Gear Solid. Here on the podcast, this gaming podcast, before we end up going and calling it a show. And so let me finish this coffee here. But I hope all you guys can kind of understand where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to preach to anybody. I'm not trying to tell anybody how they should live. Like, look, live your life. I'm a believer in letting everybody do their own thing, as long as it's not directly harming somebody or damaging private property, actively. I'm a believer in that, but I just think that there just comes a time where it's like, there's nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with being passionate and emotional, but you do have to try to keep it clean, I guess, is if I'm just going on and on now. So anyway, let's talk about Metal Gear Solid. Now, look, this rumor came from Red Gaming Tech, and I think that Red Gaming Tech, I've seen some people say he's not correct. I've seen other people say he has been correct in the past. I haven't been following close enough, because he seems to deal mostly with like hardware stuff and leaks and whatnot. And he even admitted in his video that he's still trying to build his, excuse me, build up his sources when it comes to the gaming side of things. So, he's saying that Metal Gear Solid is currently being remade, and like the first game is getting like the full blown remake treatment. And it's a situation where it is very plausible. I want to believe it, and that's why I'm like, it's difficult for me to speak on this, because I see people saying like rumors, getting tired of rumors. Well, that's just the nature of the gaming industry. I mean, if you don't want to hear rumors, then just don't click on any of my videos that say rumor right in the thumbnail. That might help. Or also just, click off the podcast if you don't want to hear this section of it. But I want to talk about it because, and I was saying, like, it's difficult for me to talk about it much, because it's something I really want. It really is. And I think because of that, a part of me is just, it's like, a part of me does believe a little bit more than maybe I should. But I'm trying not to convey that too much, or relay. Like, I'm not saying that's how anybody else should see it, but I'm a huge Metal Gear Solid fan. And the idea that we could see a photorealistic, complete remake from the ground up with the original voice actors of Metal Gear Solid 1 on the PS5. And that's the thing, apparently, if the rumor is to be believed, It's going to be a console exclusive to the PS5. It will be going to PC as well, but we're also going to be getting Metal Gear Solid 2, 3, and 4 just kind of ported over to the PS5 as well. He didn't really. He said that he wasn't sure if it's going to be like a remasters or whatnot. They might just, maybe get an up-res and a bump in frame rate, but they're still going to be like their games. I see people bring up like Blue Point. Like, is it Blue Point working on it? I don't know. It seems like they went all out for Demon Souls. So, if it is a full blown remake, I mean, it makes sense that it would be Blue Point, but still, I would have a hard time believing that they're able to do that while taking on Demon Souls as well. It is possible, but is he saying don't get your panties in a bunch, MEG? Just talking about in general. I'm tired of the rumors. No, I understand, man. I totally get it. It is a situation where we are getting closer to launch, so it's like you would think the rumors would kind of die down, but I have a very good feeling that the rumors are going to continue to persist all throughout 2021, just like they have in 2020. Maybe not as many. And maybe we've learned, at least I've learned through the experience of 2020 with all of the fake rumors and leaks, that you got to really pick and choose. And I think, Red Gaming Tech seems like, he's the kind of guy, reminds me of Moore's Law is Dead, where they're giving this information and they're just making it clear that, look, they're not saying that we should buy into this 100%, but this is what they're hearing. And they do have some faith in their sources, that their sources are not just completely, taking them for a ride here. And so, it is interesting because, we did hear the rumor that Sony had some type of secret launch exclusive, and we have yet to hear anything about something like that. They have and this game was supposed to be synonymous with PlayStation. Could it be that Metal Gear is that game? But I can tell you right now, like, it's not going to be at launch. It's impossible at this point. That's not a thing. We know about the launch lineup. So if maybe by launch, maybe launch window, no, I doubt that as well. So if Metal Gear Solid is real, I think that maybe we could see it announced maybe sometime in 2021. I wouldn't expect, if it is in fact real, I wouldn't expect it any sooner than that, but we just don't know. We just don't know, and I would love to see. I think that'd be a huge get, and that's where, you talk about, well, what about Sony buying Konami again? This is where I kind of do believe, like, if Sony was aware that Microsoft and other companies were going after ZeniMax, maybe they became aware of the fact that they're not going to be able to get ZeniMax, in Bethesda, and they might lose all of Bethesda's games. Well, maybe they started going to places like Konami and be like, look, let's strike a deal. I've said it many times before. Sony was clearly trying to, they were clearly trying to apparently buy. Well, I don't want to say clearly because it was a rumor, but they were apparently trying to buy Konami's IP, and Konami wouldn't sell. So it wouldn't surprise me if they struck a deal where, let's make a Silent Hill, let's make a Metal Gear, let's do stuff with this IP, because this is valuable IP, very valuable, very well known in the gaming industry. People love it, has huge fan bases and followings, and some of it, like Metal Gear, is synonymous with PlayStation. So, Oi Akurumi, you're saying, all I'm saying is that not all companies are perfect. Share the love. Yeah, I agree, man. Companies are companies. They're ever changing and ever evolving, and you got to just be able to, try to see things more clearly, which I've been trying to make a bigger effort in doing. And so, when it comes to the Metal Gear rumor, I can't say that I believe it 100% because, we got to be honest here. Like, even when Red Gaming Tech himself is saying that he doesn't know, we're going to have to see, he's not 100%. He also did, okay, here's one last thing we do need to talk about before I go, as my voice is starting to go here. Keegan Moore, you're saying MBG off topic, but do you think Kratos will die in the next God of War? I don't know. I don't know, man. I want to say no. And I know that people are going to be like, well, what about, spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2? I'm going to give you a couple seconds to leave if you don't want to hear it. Leave now if you don't want to hear any spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2. I'm going to drop it in 3, 2, One, so yeah, Joel dies in The Last of Us Part 2. I think we all know this. And people are gonna bring up, well, if they'll kill off Joel just like that, then what's stopping them from killing off Kratos? Like, we gotta be honest right now. Joel was not like Joel is different from Kratos in the sense that Kratos is like a mascot, like a long term. I'm not saying that Joel isn't, because Joel's one of my favorite characters of all time, but it was always kind of implied that Joel was not this, he's not the center of, uh, The Last of Us. And when they decided to really kind of put Ellie at the forefront, I think it was pretty clear that, okay, yeah, Joel's definitely not the mascot, but especially when Abby showed up and she basically is playing the starring role, that made it very clear that, like, I just don't see Kratos being killed off, because it's just, that's like killing off Nathan Drake. Like, do you kill off Nathan Drake? I don't think so. I really just don't think you do that. Like, that's a face of PlayStation. Um, I feel like Joel could kind of be replaced with Ellie, and I guess in this case, Naughty Dog wants to replace Ellie with Abby as the face of like a different type of mascot. So I don't know, man. But yeah, I don't know if Kratos did die though. I wouldn't be totally shocked. I'd be like, okay, it is what it is, I think that if it, I'm all I'm gonna say is this, because I feel like you baited me here, buddy. I feel like you baited me with that. All I'm gonna say is this: if Kratos dies off, I hope he gets a death that feels fitting for his character, in the sense that I like Kratos as a character, and I think he's a very special character. And I really hope that if they decide that this is his last game and this is his big hoorah and he's done, I like to imagine in my head, for as cliche as it may sound, that maybe Kratos would die in some epic way, saving his son or something, or sacrificing himself. I just feel like that'd be really cool. But hey, that's just me. Anyway, he probably won't die though. I mean, come on, it's God of War, it's Kratos. How you gonna kill Kratos? Hopefully not with you know what? I'm not even gonna go there. Anyway, let's move on, because you guys are clearly trying to bait me here. Siler18, you're saying Kratos destroyed an entire realm of people, and Joel spent 20 plus years killing innocent people. The devil eventually comes here. Yeah, I guess that is one. Hey, there's multiple ways to see things, and I guess you could see it in that way. Maybe in that sense, Joel and I don't know, man. It is, yeah, Kratos, he has a past just like Joel does, so hopefully we won't have our expectations subverted though. I feel like we got enough of that. Can we all agree on that? Like, can we just have our expectations like not be subverted for once? That's all. Anyway, one other thing I do need to bring up before we end the podcast here, because it does kind of fall in line with the Metal Gear Solid rumor, is there's been this persistent rumor about a Bloodborne remaster. And apparently this Bloodborne remaster is going to be a pretty big undertaking. Like, it's going to be completely, not, like completely remastered, native 4K, 60 FPS, ray tracing, textures redone, all that stuff, fully implemented with, trying to take full advantage of all the features that the PlayStation 5 has to offer. But what makes it incredibly interesting and important, in my opinion, is, if the rumor is to be believed, apparently they're going to be adding new content, like cut content that didn't make it in the final game for whatever reason, which that would be incredibly interesting. And I really hope that that's true, because I kind of, I got into a little bit of a thing on Twitter with the whole Spider-Man remaster. And, I put more thought into it, and I don't fully take back my stance. My stance is basically like, I'm not sure why Sony is charging for, or locking, not charging, but locking specifically Spider-Man Remastered behind the Miles Morales paywall. And I was kind of arguing, look, when you see like CD Projekt Red, they're giving out upgrades to Cyberpunk 2077 and even The Witcher 3 years later for free, and there's other companies doing this. I don't know, it's just crazy, because people are interpreting what I'm saying. It's like, oh, you're saying Insomniac isn't putting work into their remaster. You're saying that they should just give out free handouts. I guess we should just expect all games to be free. And again, people get so extreme, and it's like that's not what I'm saying at all. Like, I don't even know how you're interpreting it that way. What I'm saying is it really such a crazy thing? Just, I know it's so insane of me to sit here and say, well, Sony, you are a multi-billion dollar company. Maybe it would be a great gesture of goodwill to the fan base and I'm not saying everyone, those who bought Spider-Man PS4, maybe give them the remastered version for free as like a big thank you. What the hell is wrong with that? Like, I'm not even saying you can't charge for it for people who don't have Spider-Man PS4. Charge 30 or $20 for it if you want. I just don't get it, man. Like, why is that so crazy? Like that. Oh, and then people were commenting at me. And you're like, oh, so I guess you expect Bloodborne remastered to be free and any other future remaster. It's like that's not what I'm saying. I'm the same guy who's saying that I'm totally cool with Sony, charging $70. I mean, I live in the US, so charging $70 for quality games that they feel are worth it, such as Demon's Souls. I'm not saying like, oh man, like that game should be $50 because I feel like that's what it's worth. Like, no, I get it. Like, Sony is one of the few publishers that they have proven some of their games. Yeah, I don't mind paying, an extra $20 or $10. I know for some people it's 20, but look. And then the big argument that people were bringing up to me is like, dude, you need to understand, like, this is a remaster. Like, they're putting a lot of effort and work into it. And I get that. But here's the real question. And look, I guess what I could say is this. It'll be an interesting situation to compare what CD Projekt Red does with their free Witcher 3 upgrade to what Sony is calling a remaster with Spider-Man. Because maybe there are huge differences. And I think it really comes down to that. Because I'm going to tell you right now, guys, honestly, if CD Projekt Red basically does the same thing for The Witcher 3 that Sony or Insomniac does for Spider-Man Remastered, but they're giving theirs out for free 5 years later to those who purchased it, not for everybody, then I'm going to have to kind of look at Sony and be like, I don't know, man. You have other companies kind of showing up, and I get it. They don't have to do anything. I get it. They don't have to give me a free anything. I'm not that type of person. I do not expect free handouts whatsoever. Believe me when I tell you, I will more than happily pay for something if I feel as though it's worth it. But I gotta say this. Can we at least agree? That the way Sony's handling the situation with the Spider-Man remaster is a little bit of a cluster where I feel like maybe a good middle ground is at least sell the remaster separately, which I'm sure down the line they will. But could you at least sell it separately for like $10 or $20 to those who want to buy it? Because I don't know. I just find it strange, man. That's all. I just think it's a little bit, I don't know, man. Like, come on. And here's another thing I want to bring up as well. Again, I am not taking away any work that Insomniac has put in because I know it takes work and effort to remaster a game. I'm not saying that. But I think something else we do have to keep in mind here is that the difference between, say, paying, I don't know, $30 or $40 for a complete remaster Bloodborne with some extra content versus, expecting something like Spider-Man Remastered to be free is what maybe it's just me and maybe I'm making a big assumption here, but it's strange to me that like is it just me or I'm pretty sure all of the remastering that was being put into Miles Morales was all stuff that was going to be done anyway for Miles Morales. You get what I'm saying? Where it's like, how, like, did Insomniac, did they really have to go through every single thing in Spider-Man Remastered for PS4? Or is it kind of like, well, we completely, remastered the city for Miles Morales. We did all the texture work. We did all of the characters. We did all of that stuff because it was necessary to do for the Miles Morales standalone game, which is in the same city. How much did they really have to go back to apply that to Spider-Man PS4? Do you understand what I'm saying? And maybe, again, I could be making a huge assumption. Maybe they did have to go back and do a lot of work. All I'm saying is that I just think it would have been, look, I'll put it to you this way. I just think this is a huge missed opportunity for Sony to really just show a huge thank you to the fans and a huge gesture of goodwill. Because does that mean I'm not expecting any more remasters? No, I know there's going to be more remasters, and I'm not saying they should be given out for free. I'm just saying, in the case of Spider-Man, it's a 2018 game, guys. Like, it's a 2018 game. Like, how much can you really remaster a game that is only 2 years old? Like, that's the thing that's really kind of surprising me, that people are so they get so defensive, where it's like, I've seen people literally telling people like me, like, to F off, because I'm asking for free handouts. I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, you just can't win sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, if you disagree with me and let me know why. Like, and I'm not sitting here, I'm not losing my mind on Sony saying, oh my God, what's wrong with you? I'm just simply saying, look, it's a little bit strange to me. That's all. I'm gonna buy that version, and the main reason I'm gonna buy it is because I'm going to be very interested to see if this is going to be worth $20. Again, I feel like if they were selling Spider-Man Remastered separately for $20, maybe the situation would be different. Because to me, paying $20 for what you would call a remastered game, that's going to come down to when I play that game. If it really feels like a genuine remaster, like, okay, this definitely feels like it was worth $20, that's cool, that's fine. But if it really feels like it just seems like they kind of, upped the resolution and frame rate and charged me for it, I don't think that's, at this point in time, it's like, are we really going to be doing that? So I'm going to give Spider-Man Remastered the benefit of the doubt. Okay, Insomniac came out, they put out a tweet, and they said, look, they said, look, we did this, we did that, we did this, we did that. I'm like, okay, all right, you're the developers. I'm going to take your word for it. I guess all I'm saying is, I just hope when I play it, it doesn't just really come off to me as it just looks like a resolution bump and a frame rate bump. I hope it's more than that. And maybe it is. Hopefully it is. iSiler18, you're saying, I can only see ray tracing 4K 60, maybe above 60 for Spidey Remaster. And of course the loading. But like I said, it's only 2 years old. And yeah, that's the whole thing, is like, I'm not saying, and I don't mean to keep ranting here, I didn't expect to go on this rant. I'm not saying that it didn't take them time, effort, and work to implement ray tracing into the city, into redoing those textures and really bringing them up to the standard and really going all out. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, you want me to believe that wasn't work that was already being done for a game you're going to be charging me for, that being Spider-Man Miles Morales? That's all I'm saying, man. Like, that, to me, that's what really separates Bloodborne Remastered from something like Spider-Man. Like, that's all. Stardust Dragon X3. My only problem with Sony is cross-platform save data transfer and the censorship BS after making us watch that horror show from The Last of Us 2. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's a whole weird situation. To me, that just seems like some miscommunication from both sides of Sony. I think they tried to rectify that. But yeah, the cross-save data is not good either, so... Look, I'm not trying to make a bigger deal out of it. I know that people are like, well, if you don't like it, don't buy it. And I'm like, oh, I get it. Like, again, I'm not trying to be toxic about it. I just went on a rant about this earlier. I'm just simply saying, like, if we don't give our feedback, things can never really change. But that's what it has to be, is feedback. And so I guess all I'm saying is this. I hope that when I get my $70 version of Spider-Man Miles Morales and I go and I play, Spider-Man Remastered, I just hope that it feels like, wow, this is actually extremely impressive. And I certainly feel like my extra $20 that I spent was more than worth it. And I will give them the benefit of the doubt and say, if they put as much effort and work into it as they are saying, then I'm sure it will be. I'm just hoping that I don't do that, and then we see the Witcher 3 upgrade and it literally looks just as good, and they did everything that Insomniac also did, but they gave it out for free. At that point, I'm going to be like, okay, this is a little strange, So it's going to be up to them to, if they want to continue using the word remaster, they can talk about it, but they can say all the things they did, but that's not what's going to matter at the end of the day. Just like I say, when it comes to 1440p, it doesn't matter, because what matters at the end of the day is what I'm seeing in front of me. If they can show me something that looks damn impressive and damn good, and I'm like, okay, looks good to me, then that's all that's going to matter. That's all that's going to matter. So, um, but all right, guys, I think that's pretty much going to have to wrap up today's podcast. I know that I haven't been doing the chat Q&A, and I do apologize for that. Maybe I'm going to have to start, I don't know, figuring out a better balance here. It's really tough for me because, like, it's going on 2.5 hours. My throat's starting to go a little bit now, my voice, and I'm very hungry. So I do apologize for those of you who are hoping we could do another chat Q&A. I like to think, though, at the end of the day, you guys do appreciate me trying to, talk about some of these topics. I know you're saying, did I go over the pre-orders? Actually, I didn't. Unfortunately, I'm not going to talk long about it because, as I said, my voice is really starting to go. But what I will say is, it seems like pre-orders for the PlayStation 5, the second wave, uh, were very, very limited, and they went like that. So a lot of people still weren't able to get it. When it comes to the Xbox Series X pre-orders, everybody thought that the situation was going to be so much better than the Sony's, and it just wasn't. It was just as bad. And to me, that's not a slight against Microsoft. I just think that it just goes to show that it doesn't really matter how they do it, how they were going to do it. I do understand that, Sony giving 1 day's notice, still, it could have at least been two, at least two, you know. Um, but all in all, with the pre-order situation, I feel sorry for anybody who really want one and couldn't get one. Hopefully, there will be more opportunities for you to do so. And I was lucky enough to get mine. And there's people basically saying, "Oh, you're pre-ordering multiple PlayStation 5s." Like, no, I'm not. Like, I have a single PlayStation 5 pre-ordered for myself. So, yeah. But that's pretty much all I have to say about it. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much going to do it for this episode of Press X Podcast. A huge, huge thank you to everyone who, has been supporting the podcast, continues to show your support. Those of you who watch the entire thing, big thank you to all of those of you who watch after the fact. It really helps a lot. And, I just genuinely appreciate all you guys kind of hanging out with me and listening to me go on and on and on. For like 2.5 hours. MBG scalper confirmed with proof. No, dude. Or MLG. No, you didn't say MBG. You said MLG. So I don't know who that is. Maybe they are a scalper. I'm not. Dude, I'm not a scalper. I think that that's just messed up. But yeah, I hope everybody, enjoys the rest of their day. If you could do me one more favor before you go on your way out, hit that like button. We're at 963 likes. We're on the edge of hitting that 1K like mark. And as I tell you guys all the time, likes help the podcast out tremendously, helps kind of get it out there to everybody else. So, but all right, guys, enjoy the rest of your day. To all my members, huge shout out to you guys. Look forward to your exclusive members only MBG and Friends podcast. And huge shout out to Devil Shooter 126 once again for week over week going above and beyond to help do the timestamps on the podcast. I did make you a mod, by the way. I'm sure you noticed. So thank you for that, buddy. And everybody show Devil Shooter 126 some love there for doing that, because I know it's not easy. And yeah, that's going to do it, guys. Look forward to the upcoming content throughout the week. I'm sure we're going to have some exciting things to talk about. And I hope to see you here again next week for episode 35 of Press X Podcast. But until next time, guys, take care.